right.
Yeah, sort of.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to see everyone. Just wanted to let you know, as was posted, this is a joint board meeting. So just to lay the groundwork a little bit, we're going to do things in a particular sequence. So first, I'm going to open the meeting for District 75. We're going to take attendance, and then we're going to ask for D75 specific public comment. Then
I will open the D120 board meeting. And again, we will take attendance and then ask for any comments specific to D120. So that way the public knows which district they're asking.
right, and if your comment is common to both districts, and it's kind of your choice when you want to speak. So with that, I'd like to call to order the District 75 Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, July 13th. Secretary, please call the roll.
Pelletier,
Here.
Fingerhut, here, Gallegos,
Here.
Fitzke,
Here.
St. Clair,
Here,
Rose,
Here.
and Holly.
Holly should be virtual. Okay, we'll check that when he comes in. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to call for citizens' comments regarding D75 issues or topics. The Board of Education really welcomes citizen input. Citizens are reminded to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and also that matters regarding employees or confidential student matters should not be discussed, nor will they be entertained. And also, as a reminder for those of you who may be new to the public comment, it's a comment section. The board generally, in most cases, do not respond. We want your input. We take your information. And just so that's clear, it's a little different than a town hall question and answer type setting. So with that, we'll open it up for both online comments and in person, should they be any. Public comments, whether they come from our online audience or for our in-person audience. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, please state your name. Sure. Feel free to use the podium. We ask that comments in general be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up when you're approaching that time.
Well, it's nice to see everyone today. My name is Lindsay Shifley, and I know several faces in the room. It's really great to see everybody. And I've recently sent some emails, and so I'm going to pretty much just work off of the email because there's a lot of people who haven't sent it that I don't have all their emails for. I'm a lifelong resident of Mundelein. I'm also a proud alumni of Mundelein High School. I was very active there. And I had the distinct honor, because of my Mundelein High School education and athletic experience, to receive a full scholarship to Northwestern University. I received a speech and language degree in 1999, and though I am not currently practicing, I did have the opportunity to work at Woodlands Consolidated School District. I'm not a speech and language therapist anymore. I am a coach and a chef. Some of you may know me from my time ambassador. I brought several tastings to our school district at West Oak. And a couple of times at Mundelein High School also, I got to address the athletes. So I'm mind-body, gut health, and just all things science and nerdy things. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm also a softball coach, and I coach many of the pitchers in this area, and I absolutely love it. I also had the opportunity to volunteer my time in our transition building for our special needs students, and it was one of the most amazing opportunities that I've ever been given to bring that. So first and foremost, I can't imagine the stress and the challenges the pandemic has brought forth into running our community schools, 75, 76, and District 120. And I'm also speaking in behalf of my husband today. We truly believe that both all districts and its leadership teams have the best interests of everyone at heart. And I'm here to specifically address policy regarding masking that is at everyone's minds right now. And I would like to start off by imploring you to strongly consider a mask option for all students and staff in school West Oak School and Mundaline High School, and they've handled the past year admirably. However, my oldest, who's now going to be a junior, had a very rough start. They are beyond excited. It appears in a very healthy capacity. A few days ago, the CDC released recommendations regarding masking, that they be optional for those who've taken the vaccine, those staff and students. And though it is a positive step towards normalcy, I'm concerned due to the large group of students and staff who've chosen for a variety of reasons not to be vaccinated. Many have been exposed to COVID-19, and it is now known that we have immunity, whether we get it from the vaccine or get it naturally. And I really hope that this mask optional policy can be put into place regardless of vaccination status. The data
You know
continues.
you're on 3 minutes now. so
Okay,
if you
thanks.
could-
Let's have a little bit more.
Okay.
Life is not without risk. We've been sending our kids to school through flu seasons forever. And though we will likely never achieve zero COVID, which would be an amazing thing, I am not an anti-vaxxer. My kids are fully vaccinated with all vaccines. I think that's important for you. And I think that medical choice and freedom is a slippery slope. And I worry very much about what students are going to be put through if their teachers are to identify them as vaccinated or not. That worries me a lot. And I think that that choice is a good one. And I think that's a choice that we're all living with right now. And lastly, I encourage, those who I've sent the emails to, please spread them and just share them. I
Thank you very much.
connected a lot of great data. And thank you so much for hearing me today. And again, I stand for medical health freedom and choice. And I think the slippery slope of identifying
Thank you.
people
Thank you.
would be a
We have
huge
to let
social and
everyone else
emotional concern.
That might be
So thank
speaking
you.
of their share. Thanks. Is there anyone else? We have anybody online?
We don't have anyone.
Okay,
And I will
thank
open-
you. We'll turn it over to Laura.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'd like to open Board of Education of District 120 will now come to order at 6:38. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mellon,
Here.
Ponce,
Here.
Rostrelli, here, Pecky,
Here.
Wellington here, Yaffe.
Here.
Vote,
Here. Okay, and is there any citizens' comments for District 120 specific? Online? No. Okay. All right. Do you need to do your reports first?
The District 75 will now hear the report of the superintendent's office.
No. Bring it on, let's go.
So today is opportunities where we get to come together. And 2 years ago, when the board decided to move to shared services, it was for this very reason, for us to be able to come together, show how we would be able to work together more, pooling our resources. And after 2 years, bringing this report to you today for what we want to be able to do as a district, I can tell you I'm very proud of the work that we've put together to give you an idea of what we're going to be working on this upcoming year. And what I'm advocating for every one of you to be able to do as board members, take these packets, please print them if you haven't, keep those with you. Every board meeting, these are the guiding principles when we're bringing information to you or recommendations. This is your role to be able to hold us accountable when, hey, when we had this meeting in July, here's what we said we were doing. How is that in line with this? So we're going to be referring back to this report come mid-year, and we're going to have an end of year summary again in a year from now. So with that, you're going to see that there is alignment and consistency with the programs that we are putting in place. And what you're also finding is the pooling of resources to better utilize our funds and even to be able to maybe add revenue or decrease cost are in these plans. So without further delay, Let's start off with our business office.
Good evening. I'm T. Ransack. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for District 75. As our two districts work together to develop financial goals that we could share and maintain together, we have come up with advance and expand the educational opportunities for all of our students while maintaining fiscally responsible methods and policies. So how do we do that? We do that by supporting our district-wide education initiatives, maintaining and providing sustainable staffing levels, as well as sustainable expenditure levels and increases. Finally, maintaining those balanced budgets. We can go to the next slide. As we looked at our short range goals, we put into effect three things. Challenge the traditional methods of operation and finances so as to provide resources, infrastructure, and incentives required to expand the educational opportunities of all students. The key in that section is challenging those traditional methods of thinking. So looking at our expenditures, looking at our revenues and saying, where can we find those alternative sources of revenue and those alternative maybe methods of sharing expenditures to provide reductions. Next was to promote responsible resource allocation through long-range financial planning. So what this does for us is this gives us the ability to say, this is what we're looking at coming down the line. This is what we think we're going to spend, and trying to really put out fires before they happen, basically, by looking at those, say, for example, those large groups of kids that are coming into the district that may increase our kindergarten levels, or those kindergartners that now may be entering into the high school. So those are just a couple examples of long-range things that we need to be looking at and promoting those resource allocations. And then finally, to create and promote an atmosphere that's welcoming, engaging, and connects our schools, families, and communities. As the business office, and also the one that's usually responsible for fee waivers and lunch applications and a lot of connection with the community, we need to maintain those relationships and really work to foster those relationships. So that's the final short range goals that we will be implementing, both D75 and D120. So first and foremost, we have looked at what we've done as a joint shared service in terms of District 75. And when we implemented the joining of the assistant superintendent for special services, we did eliminate a position. We had an individual who resigned, and we thought we could eliminate that position. Having now come full circle, we've realized that we need to reinstate that position. But as part of reinstating that position, we do have a method and a goal that will hopefully provide a revenue source for that for both District 75 and District 120. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Andy.
I'm Andy Searle. I'm Chief School Business Official from Mundelein High School. Welcome. And we're pretty excited about this goal that we have. As T mentioned, that we're looking at ways that we can creatively get more revenue to help cover really just various expenditures that we have, especially in the special ed area, but also in that position that T just mentioned. But this first goal that we have here is to get a Medicaid specialist grant writer. And the basic goal, and I'll get into more detail here in a second, is that both districts will realize a minimum reimbursement of $2,000 per Medicaid eligible student, and also apply for and receive at least one competitive or state grant in this next fiscal year. The next slide, please. Where this idea came from, I went to a conference this spring for the Illinois Association of School Business Officials. And this whole area of Medicaid revenue has just been one that's kind of been one that I've never really looked into too much. We've always gotten a certain amount of money from it. Both districts have. District 75 has gotten a little bit more historically than Mundelein High School, but we generally were in about the $50,000 a year range. And I think you guys are maybe twice that. And when I never thought too much about where that money came from, how it was generated, it always seemed like kind of this strange source of revenue, and it wasn't very much money. Well, I went to this seminar because I was curious to think of ways, how can we get more money? How can we get more revenue for the school district? And always looking for ways to do something differently and maybe generate some more funds. And I was shocked by what the gentleman at the seminar said. He works for obviously Huntley Community School District, and all the districts here on this chart are ones that are in their region. So it'd be that whole northwest, far west, northwest suburban area. They've been able to generate $4,000 per Medicaid student, Medicaid eligible student. Now, to give you some perspective, both of our districts, 75 and 120, we'd be at the other end of this chart, not at the far end. And that's why we saw this. I saw this, and what a great opportunity where we could generate some revenue. Now, what this business manager recommended doing, and what they've done at Huntley, is they've hired a full-time person to just work on those sorts of grants, and he recommended that highly. Now, with Medicaid, the way it works, just to give you a real quick background on it, the federal government looks at school districts as being health providers in a certain sense. The typical ones you usually see are nurses. You know, you think, oh yeah, that's healthcare. Speech pathologists, that could be another one. But I guess there's a whole lot of, and again, I'm learning, this is all new to me, but you can have instructional aides, you could have social workers, you can identify all kinds of different people that can provide Medicaid eligible services. And I think that's where the opportunity will be for us to generate more revenue. Our goal, we're not going to shoot for that 4,000 right away. Hopefully that'll be something we can do somewhere down the line. We're looking more in the middle of the pack. That's a $2,000 per Medicaid eligible student. That's our goal this year. And I think that's a pretty stretch goal for us, being in a first year of a program. But if we were able to do that, Anna, could you move to the next slide real quick here? Well, I'll get to the measurables here. First of all, we'll get into the dollars here in just a second. The measurables are, obviously we'd hire a person to manage that program. They'd learn all about Medicaid reimbursement. It's quite complicated from what I understand. It is, any federal program typically is. But you have to identify teachers, staff, you have to provide quarterly information. You have to keep constantly knowing who's in, who's out, who can be reimbursed for these various positions. And that's where a lot of the work comes in, and doing those regular reports to get reimbursements. The second piece of it, there's also some special ed types of programs that they can help with as well. And those are the second bullet point there. So you have private facility reimbursement, and that's a dollar amount that you get reimbursed for when you send kids to private tuition-based programs. Orphanage, those are also very similar to that. Room and board is where you're actually sending students off totally someplace else where they're living on campus at a school. So those are different ones where they can also, I think we can generate more revenue there, and that'll be something we'll have to delve into, but that's what this person would also be responsible for helping out with. And then the last piece is that they would apply for at least one competitive federal or state grant. And there are a boatload of grants out there, but it's very difficult. Again, anything with the federal government, just think IRS and how complicated that can be. The federal government tends to have a lot of rules, regulations. This person could get up on that. There are a lot of competitive grants that can be won, a lot more on the federal level. There are also some on the state level that you can get. And that person would also have to learn that and get involved in doing that. And our goal for that person would be to get at least one of those for our districts going forward. Now we get into the fun part about money. The costs are at the top there. We have the administrative assistant, and then we also have the Medicaid specialist and grant writer. That's the cost end of it. But we think we can generate, and this I believe is conservative, is 125 to 250 per district. Now, when you think of it, Mundelein High School's only been getting around 50,000 a year traditionally, and District 120, I think, is around 125. I mean, District 75, sorry. So we can really expand that. I think that's a conservative estimate, but we didn't want to shoot for the moon too much in the first year. The projected bottom line savings, when you take all the additional costs plus what we can generate in revenue, would be 100 to 350 additional dollars in revenue, $1,000 in revenue that we can generate between the two districts. So we're pretty excited about recommending that. We're excited to see what we can do to generate more revenue this next year and make that a permanent type of revenue stream going forward. Any questions on that?
So all the additional revenue, besides the cost of the actual positions themselves, would be to improve the programs that we're offering or the services that
You
we're
can
offering.
really use it however you want to. There's no tie back to say, other than doing those quarterly reports where they say, you know, you have all these various people you're claiming, that's the fee for service part. There's administrative outreach part where people, that's again, another big paperwork nightmare where, let's say you're a speech therapist, so I'll send you a piece of paper every quarter and say, how many hours did you actually spend doing Medicaid reimbursable time? And so you have to, each one of those people, staff members has to fill that out, turn it in, and then this person would have to turn that in to get the reimbursement. So you can see just the, and I'm just giving the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of paperwork that's involved. But it doesn't have to be, if your question is, it doesn't have to be used for special education. It's just a revenue source that gets in there. You don't get any audit on that end. It's more the audit at the beginning to see that you are claiming the people that you can claim accurately. And then after that, you just put the money in the bank essentially and use it however you want to.
When
Is that the question you had, or?
Yeah, I just wanted, like, it's great that we're gonna save money, and it's wonderful that we have additional source of revenue to implement in programs that need it.
Yes.
So that's what I was.
When you were at the seminar, did they give you a sense of the pool of people out there with the skill set that you need? I could see ideally you would want somebody who's dealt with this particular type of program, but there are also medical grant writers, all sorts of grant writers whose skill set might be transferable. So did you get a sense of how hard or difficult, easy it might be to recruit for this position?
He didn't get into that end of it. The way he described it was more like a business office person that would be more of a traditional business office, whether it would be a person that is just good with numbers, is able to reconcile accounts, but also knows about grants and how that whole process works. But there's a huge training piece of it too. And Jamie, our special ed assistant superintendent, can tell you there's also support out there that we can get for training as well. There's a lot of
So
support out there
depending
that
on
we
what
can,
you need with who you
yes.
get.
So we wouldn't be shooting in the dark. There's a lot of people out there that can help us to train this person.
Yes, this is likely going to be a trainable position, someone who's not going to come with the skills needed. But the good news is Huntley 158, I used to work there, and I worked with the person who actually does this and is getting the district ample amounts of money, obviously $4,000 per student. And she's agreed to come train our person. So we do have the ability to at least start with that first part and then work on the grant writing later.
Since this is going to be a new position for both districts and there's likely to be a learning curve, do we anticipate, and I see that you've set some lofty goals, hoping that we can meet or exceed those, but knowing that there's probably a learning curve, do we anticipate that we may want to, are we being asked to look at this maybe in one more year to see if this is, if we've met that goal, and or I would think with something like this, we may want to set a little bit more of a long-term goal so that we can meet that learning curve before we're absolutely holding them accountable to these goals.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think, as I mentioned before, we do already have some of it in place and we are already getting reimbursement. So I think there's things that we can do even right off the bat before this person's even hired to start generating more revenue. And I've talked with Jamie about it too. We're working on that end of it to try to start maximizing those sources even now. And then once that person gets in, then they can really take off once they get trained on it.
And they can actually go back 18 months and claim any
Yes.
services that were
Oh,
missed.
retroactive.
So again, that's another reason why we're trying to get this person in place, get them trained and get them going.
So, yes. Liz?
Did you say that the fees that we would receive are tied to the services and the people, staff, not to the individual students who receive the
Right.
services?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so if you
Okay.
think about it, we have
We know more about-
450 kids. in this
That are
program that are
Medicaid
Medicaid eligible. If they have just 2 services that they're being provided, now you got 2 timesheets for every single child that relates to an actual teacher that has to sign that. And then you have an individual who's tracking all of that. So there is a lot of those kinds of
Paperwork.
things, but it is tracked by student, by staff member.
So in theory, what I said to Laura is I'm thinking, okay, you've got a student who's Medicaid eligible and that student sees speech pathologist, social worker, maybe school, I mean. There could be a lot of time sheets for that kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
And that's exactly it. And this is why you kind of need a dedicated position to get these things. But the more this person gets involved and tracks the minutes, the more, it's basically free money because it isn't required to go back to any program. So
And it's services that child is getting anyways.
correct,
Yes.
exactly.
It's
Just filing the
and it's-
paperwork.
Yeah, and it's making sure
So we're sort of
we're
billing Medicaid,
identifying,
if you will.
yeah, we're identifying every kid that can get that as Medicaid eligible, as well as the staff members who are providing those services.
So looks like it's 150 salaries, I assume, then you got benefits on top of that. So what's the all-in on those people? Plus, it just seems a little odd that the assistant's just 10,000 light of the other one. I would think there'd be a little more of a gap between the person writing the Medicaid and doing the grant writing versus an administrative assistant helping.
I prepared the financials on this, so I can answer that. So these are 2 similar, for lack of better terms, similar positions, because again, we're not talking about an administrative type position. So right now, we're budgeting for this to be a lower paid position on our end, but hopefully putting in that bonus structure. So that bonus structure that says to them, okay, I'll give you a great example, the digital equity grant. This district, District 75, almost missed it. We almost missed it because I had no idea it existed. So this person, and this was for $125,000 that we already were spending. So that's free money that comes back to us. So this person seeking out those types of grants, seeking out corporate donations, seeking out those types of things. If we develop a bonus structure that's related to, you know, is it a one-time grant you've got in the district? Is this an ongoing grant, those types of things. So you develop the bonus structure and that's how they go above and beyond. So this is all in with IMRF, all of the health insurance, and this is the structure according to District 75 standards. So that's kind of what we've put in so far. Does that help answer?
Yeah, Mark, too, on that, on the Medicaid specialist with that bonus piece, they'll have an opportunity to make a lot more than that 80. And a lot of the federal grants, the competitive ones at least, you can build in a grant writer's piece of it's called the indirect costs. And those are sorts of things that can get built into those kind of grants that person could, that could be part of that bonus structure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Peter.
Part of my question was answered when you answered Laura's, and that was tied more to the funds you're saying are not linked to the entity or the department from which that service was being provided. I've got 2 more parts. These are really 2 different roles though, right? Grant writer is not Medicaid specialist, but it's the same person, but they're not writing grants for Medicaid. They're writing grants for grants. And then there's a Medicaid element to this, which I'm well aware of how this works. I've done it. It's extremely tedious for the provider. You break down your day in quarter hours. It takes away from your time with students. It's a great idea. It's not as fun as anybody might imagine because there's a lot of, hopefully it's beyond paper and pencil these days. But there's also additional training for staff to really understand the intricacies of what is and what isn't. And then there are audits, right? So there is this overlooking, did I do it the right way? And your papers will get,
Sent
looked
back
at
to, yeah.
possibly. And I, when we talk about, what was it, 16 months, 18 months of retroactive services too, again, it's scrutinized or has the potential to be. But that aside, these are 2 separate ways to generate revenue that are not connected.
Correct.
Okay.
But we're hoping that person will do them both.
Right.
For both districts, that's the other
For
thing.
both.
Yes, Al,
How quickly are you looking to get these people on board?
very soon.
As soon as possible. So we have both positions on the District 75 agenda tonight.
Okay. And then as far as having the person come in to help train, she's available.
I'm gonna have to talk with her and find out her schedule, and obviously I can't do that until we know when the person starts, but we will work with her. She's a great lady.
But as I mentioned too, there's already people in place, services that we use that can help us on that end as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Any other questions? We'll
See,
be-
if you can
Hopefully we'll be.
clarify. So are both those shared positions, or is one position specifically 75 and one of them shared?
They're both technically shared, because we do administrative assistant on up for the district office, so we're sharing everybody. So Kevin could say to Stacy that he needs her to do something for 8th grade, or say to Sarah he needs something done for 9th grade. So we're sharing all those positions at this moment. The additional cost savings comes when we actually are able to eliminate a position, so yes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the buildings and grounds team. Kevin Day.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Zaremba. I'm the Director of Facilities and Grounds for Mundelein 75. We are here to talk shared service goals in the maintenance side of the districts. First goal we're looking to do is hire a shared EPA certified HVA technician. A shared cost is going to be about $125,000 for the both districts. Second goal we're looking for is seal coating and striping our own parking lots. It's going to be about a $35,000 savings in between districts. And the last one is we're going to align our custodial services contracts. We'll recognize a cost of about $60,000 in both districts. Next slide, please. Here's a few pictures of some of the things we have. We're trying to show you diversity of the equipment that we have. The bottom picture and these two pictures to show that we need a certified person to be able to work on multiple different types of units. Also, we have already purchased the seal coating equipment for the parking lots, and we're going to start doing those as of next week. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Quinn. He's going to go into depth a little bit more about these. Thank you.
I am Kevin Quinn. I'm the Director of Facilities and Maintenance at District 120. Over the last year, we talked extensively about mechanical filtration, pressurization inside of our buildings, air quality. At the core of that is our mechanical infrastructure. Mundelein High School, we have 68 pieces of equipment on top of our roof. Every bit of that equipment working in concert is what delivers us appropriate air quality inside of our buildings. Those conversations didn't just start last year. That's an ongoing conversation for people from an operational perspective. Those equipment, all of the equipment requires extensive maintenance and care. There's also on this picture, the upper left-hand corner, that's our fire tube gas powered boilers inside of our lower A wing in the building. The picture next to it are 2016 modular condensing boilers inside of our the C wing, the new STEM lab. Comparable capacities, much different equipment. Direct digital controls on the equipment on the right. You don't just go up with a pipe wrench and a manometer to measure where the gas pressures are. Those are like taking your vehicle to a service station. They have to hook diagnostics equipment up to it. So it requires somebody with a skill set a little more elevated, and that's what we're going for. A lot of the equipment also requires somebody to hold a license for refrigeration. It's an EPA license. We outsource this currently. So Dave and I came up with approximately a $60,000 value between each district. So it's $120,000 total that we could bring back in-house with this position. So the savings is there. We know that the reason that we outsource, but some of it's catastrophic failure. You need a boiler goes down in the middle of winter, you have to have somebody in. A rooftop piece of equipment goes down in the middle of summer, you have to bring somebody in. If we have somebody that is working with that equipment day in, day out, we have them on call as a district's employee, we're gonna be able to respond quicker, extend the life of that equipment. That person with hands-on, dedicated specifically to that task is gonna be able to project the lifespan of that equipment for us much better. So it's we see the direct benefit in that. And it's, again, it's a skill set. A lot of the equipment is that there's advancements in technology, energy conservation, and replacing equipment. So we'll be able to head of the game on that as we source that. As we look at new construction projects inside of our districts, we'll be able to bring that person into the loop with their particular expertise to help us. So we see this as a benefit. We have a substantial investment in this equipment to prolong the life for both districts, align it as we start to replace equipment, align that, standardize things, standardize control components. It's going to serve us much better. Ultimately, it'll be a much greater. There's an opportunity cost there that we can't quantify, but we know these dynamic systems are operating all of the time, 24 hours a day. And, yesterday was 105% humidity outside. We went last night 60 degrees up to 85 degrees this afternoon. So these systems, the dynamic systems are operating all the time. So we believe from an operational perspective, this makes fiscal sense and practical sense to bring that in and take advantage of the opportunity cost there. So next slide, please, Anna. So what we did is we took the measurements of success. That would be our first line on each of these. And the next one is what's our process to achieve this goal? So the first one is we're going to reduce the amount of outsource. That's at $60,000 per district. And that's an average over the course of about 2.5 years. So we're going to be able to realize those savings, not sending that outsourced to a contractor. We use a common vendor now, the best vendor we could possibly find, and we hold them accountable for what they give us. If they come to our building and we're going to pay them $1, we try to get $1 out of them. So we'll continue to have to outsource some of it, but this person will work in concert with them. We're going to extend the life of our equipment through the dedicated person doing this preventive maintenance. We do preventive maintenance. Everybody in a building does preventive maintenance, but this will be a single person dedicated to doing that. And so we're going to extend the life of our equipment. We'll also be able to budget for, plan accordingly for any equipment that's going to be outdated. New technology comes. We can budget for that going out. So we believe that that's going to come back in. Our process to achieve that, we've already reached out to CLC and we talked, do you have any candidates? Local candidates who are in your program, who are nearing completion of that program, that will be able to obtain their EPA license shortly. We've also publicized this. We've received some very good candidates back in. Dave and I have communicated with them. So we're hopeful for that. This candidate in this position is also going to require continuing education. There's advancements all the time. Refrigeration changed a short period of time ago. It's going to continue to change. There's already another refrigerant that's going to be used in the next 3 years. We'll see that come in, R35. And so our partnership with CLC, if we don't get a candidate from them, they're open to us joining them with that continuing education that's going to be required. The second one that Dave spoke to was with our seal coating, doing that in-house. So we will do that every other year. Asphalt's a bituminous product. By its nature, it shrinks. Winters and summers, the heaving and thawing that go on through the freeze cycles, when that happens, it shrinks. You see potholes. That's a perfect example of shrinkage in asphalt. Being able to seal coat this, having the equipment and just needing to buy the bulk materials will give us a lot more freedom. It'll extend the life of that product or our lots. It'll increase the appearance of our campuses, which we're all concerned in. The overriding factor is extending the life of our pavements. And so that's that equipment, what our process is, that equipment, Dave showed you a picture of that, that's already been purchased. We need to purchase the bulk items, the material itself, and we're in the process of doing that. Dave's been sourcing that material, so that's already in progress. The reduction in the custodial services contract costs. Currently, we have managers in each district. District 75 has a vendor management. We use the same vendor. So at the end of that, at the expiration of that contract, what we would like to do is join in. We know the total square footage of all the buildings and what our requirements are. We know what our standard is for cleanliness and the functions that we support as a school, both school districts. we know what those functions are. We know what our community expects to see inside of our building. So we want to raise the standard. By controlling that with both of the districts joining, we're convinced that we'll be able to hopefully eliminate the one. Right now, we have a manager in each district and kind of a manager from that vendor overseeing. So we should be able to eliminate one of those roles. That equates to about a $60,000 to $70,000 a year savings by eliminating that role. Us being more involved directly with that contract and the hands-on manager that we'll have remaining. So we believe that's a benefit. Again, from an operational perspective, we believe this makes fiscal and practical sense. Does anybody have any questions?
I think the seal coating thing is an excellent idea. As far as any repairs that have to be done, that would still be outsourced. correct?
We do those. We currently do like cold patch when the asphalt plants close down. We do that. If we can group, like District 120 had a significant issue. We had some basin failures in our parking lot 2 years ago. So we had to bring a company in to do that. That was a little more significant, rollers and things like that. Equipment that financially it doesn't make sense to purchase. So we would outsource something like that. Basic maintenance of the pavement, crack filling, the seal coating, pothole repairs, we do that in-house.
Two questions. One was, did you also say striping? And then two was, do we have storage facility for this?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do our striping. We have the equipment.
That we
Dave and I
already
have discussed how we would do logistically, how we would do that.
That the districts have that equipment already?
Yes.
Okay.
When does the custodial contract expire?
Ours, we just signed another year, so ours will be a 1 year from now. I don't know where Kevin's is at.
And we're in the last year of ours.
I heard that because of the pandemic, that a lot of the custodial companies shut down. They couldn't stay alive because the buildings closed up and that they're just not out there and they can't get the labor force.
We kept ours busy.
Yeah, you did.
We-
But are you gonna use the same company? So I'm just saying, maybe
That's a-
you'll have not as many to choose from and their costs may go up.
It's a bid process, so we would have to see how many bids we get in.
One of the unique conditions about that is we had, when I had first got here, we had GCA, District 75 had GCA, underperforming, not a good company.
I remember.
But it was a company problem. The staff that was there, most of these people are community members. So they went to work for our new vendor. We would anticipate, and we encouraged our new vendor to keep those community members employed in our schools. They have students in our schools. And so we would encourage that or mandate that. So we have seen a little bit of turnover in the existing company. Naturally, I suppose, but not anything out of the ordinary. The staffing's been, so far, it's been sufficient.
Beautiful.
I think it's great that this is what we talk about when we talk about shared service. Exactly it. You guys working together, having more business for someone that you get a better price when you go out to bid. So wonderful. Great to see it.
Yes. Thank you.
Next, Dan Crow, for technology.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Crow. I am the Technology Director for Districts 120 and District 75. For those of you that may not know, technology is the first department to enter into shared services between District 75 and District 120 a little over 6 years ago. So this is kind of a quick update on our goals. The Mundelein High School Technology Department now supports all technology at every District 75 school. This year, we are including 4th grade in our one-to-one. And this means that all students from the 4th grade until 12th grade will be allowed to take their devices home. Since the start of Technology Shared Services Agreement, our goals have been to combine technology services by combining things like email, phone systems, security, website, Google, accounts for education. This will help make using technology easier for staff and students. It promotes uniformity between our school districts, and consortium prices, as similar to buildings and grounds, helps both districts take advantage of cost savings. This past summer, we've taken a huge step towards meeting these goals by completing one of our biggest goals. This was to merge both districts into one single network, which is based out of Mundelline High School state-of-the-art data center. Centralizing the network for both districts to one location, again, it saves costs. It adds data protection, it improves management and response times, and this will allow us to go forward with completing the goals that I had mentioned earlier. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
I have just one brief question.
Uh-huh.
Is part of merging the email and the systems, like you said, does that impact, is that only from the staff and the children's perspective, or is that also like the parent-based, like Power School and things like that? Because I think most districts use Power School, but it requires separate, but they don't quite talk to each other.
Correct. No, we will, at this time, we don't have any plans on merging Power School right now. There's really, that doesn't really get us anything to merge Power Schools.
Okay.
But what we do, what we're looking at is like combining where the server is located. Having a one server instead of two, less electricity, less cooling, you know, again, redundant backup, stuff like that.
Totally makes sense. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Up next, Shane, Human Resources update.
Good evening, everybody. So both District 120 and District 75 have relied on the talent and institutional memory of our staff to execute key administrative functions. And they've done so very well to ensure the efficiency and reliability of those services. But life happens. And a priority for the Human Resources Office for this coming year will to assist key units within both districts to build out standard operating procedures and to do cross-training so that those functions continue to run efficiently and reliably. Speaking pretty bluntly, we have very talented people, but we don't have a lot of bench strength. And so by getting units to collaborate and work well with one another, if an individual has a life event, which they have to be out for FMLA, or they're unable to complete their duties, we will already have a well-prepared process and a well-trained backup to immediately step into that. Areas of immediate concentration will be the payroll function. Some of these are very time-sensitive functions. So we won't have a lot of time to react if there is an emergency, so we're going to get ahead of it. We're also going to focus on both districts' student registration processes and District 75 transportation. The subsequent layer will be compliance reporting, FOIA requests that have to be done in 5 days, other time-sensitive functions. HR will not create those standard operating procedures, but I do have the background, and Tina and Terry do as well, to help guide those units, prepare those, and be ready in case there is a need for a transition or emergency. Additionally, we want to ensure that all new staff are prepared to hit the ground running when they're hired. There's always going to be a transition period with a new individual and a new role, but we want to ease them into that as effectively and efficiently as possible. So we are going to put a lot of concentration on creating a robust orientation program. It's interesting that there's a lot of synergy between the districts. So even an individual that may be hired at 120, and they may never set foot in a D75 building, but they may learn or be better at their position if they can learn from their peer at District 75. So we want to create those relationships and formulate a plan from the day they begin, so they not only feel welcome, but they feel prepared. Additionally, we are wanting to create a District 120 confidential sick bank. That's going to be a starting point. So a sick bank would be a pool in which an individual can voluntarily donate 5 or so days to this pool. And then they would be eligible to dip into that pool if they have an emergency or a life event and need to exceed the amount of paid sick time that they have available. But others that contributed could access that as well. Currently, only District 75's certified staff have that pool. It's nothing that the district is going to mandate, but we're going to invite these other units to explore possibly doing that. And as we've seen with COVID, when you were having staff that need to be out for quarantine or for an illness, you can go through your allotted time quickly. And this creates a safety net that's available for staff. And then the last piece is that although compliance processes are necessary, it can be heavily burdensome. And so for those on the board that are in teacher capacities, I'm sure you're familiar with GCN training. And so we want to find a better way. On any given year, staff can be asked to take 27 to 36 compliance trainings. Not only can the vehicle in which those trainings are presented be lengthy and not a good use of time, the value of the education material can also be lacking. And so we are finding ways, not going through a new vendor, but we think that we can take that material and package it in a way and have it presented from different presented to different audiences by different staff with different expertise within our own districts to make sure that there's an educational benefit there rather than checking a compliance box. So that'll be another area that we're going to focus to improve. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay, up next, Jamie, Student Services.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jamie DiCarlo. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services for both Districts 75 and 120. Tonight, I'm going to talk about our shared goal for both districts in the area of student services. I'm going to go to the next one. So our goal this year is to support the emotional and mental wellness of our school community, including our students, our staff, and our families, through social emotional supports and other resources within our buildings and just within the breadth that we can extend ourselves within the community as well. Next slide. So I think it's important to acknowledge that we've been through one heck of a 15+ month period, and just acknowledge that collective trauma of the pandemic that our community felt. So it's important that we understand and we have a joint commitment to one another, to supporting one another, and our efforts to come back as strong as possible as a community of supportive and empowered stakeholders. And we learned a lot, and there were lots of rainbows throughout this process too as well. Next slide. So there's just the different areas I want to touch upon a little bit. And the best part about this is when the principals come up and talk about their goal, they're very interconnected. So the Student Services Department will be supporting the building level and vice versa. Lots of great brainstorming throughout this process together. So first, speaking about how to support our students. So professional development is continuing to be provided for our staff so that we can have safe spaces and supportive environments for our students coming back from the pandemic. And with that, a lot working through kind of that concept of reacclimating to in-person school and establishing those routines. So we're not necessarily going to get through, chapter 1 in whatever class, by the end of the second week. We really got to take extra time to develop that classroom climate, that sense of belonging. We're back to school. We're here to support you and just reintegrate into that process. Each building will be addressing wellness themes throughout the year that affirm identity, again, promote that sense of belonging, model inclusive practices, emphasize being a good neighbor and collaboration. Things that we'll be covering are things related to empathy, making healthy choices with our wellness topics, and self-care, communication, conflict resolution, and understanding our emotions. So these are the types of themes that we'll be working on with our students. Next slide. For our staff, each building will have dedicated times within their professional development calendar to learn more about the developmentally appropriate restorative practices and student supports as we return back to full in-person. So we've done some of that. We've had some consultant support, some support from our SEL and mental health teams along the way, but some concentrated efforts within that professional development calendar for the coming year. And additionally, just staff, just like all members of our community, really need that that support, those supportive outlets. And so in addition to talking through kind of self-care prioritization strategies, as we provide some professional development in-house at our staff meetings and things like that, our student services department is also working closely with Dr. Doug Bolton, who's a professional in the field of mental health, and providing professional development opportunities at both district levels. Next slide. So families, currently we have a variety. We have some variance within the two districts in terms of what type of like parent outreach, parent education opportunities we have within the two districts. So looking at opportunities to expand in some of those areas. So again, depending on the district of each of these, you can kind of flip and see where we're at with different ones and how far we are. In some areas will be new for some of the districts. So special education, parent nights and coffees, finding more opportunities for that. We've done a lot of that on Zoom and in prior years in person, but now with again, just more creative capacity. General parent nights on topics of interest. So as we've been getting the pulse through this pandemic on what what could support our families, and just in terms of that feedback that we've received thus far, some of the topics that we could do for general parent nights, and some of these we've touched on in the past, but again, to expand stress and anxiety, executive functioning for students, dealing with trauma and loss, and also creating that environment at home for personal space, for getting the homework done. Again, we touched on that a little bit last year, but offering more opportunities with that and working with our literacy consultants in District 75, also talking about how to support that reading, the reading initiative in the household too. So those are just some of the broader general topics that we would like to see as part of our calendar for that. And then our bilingual parent advisory at both districts. We have like a beautiful collaboration between 75, 76, 120, and Hawthorne as well, where we meet monthly, our bilingual parent advisory committee. So more opportunities there along with Universidad de Padres in those leadership pieces. And then something that will be new to 120 to 75 that we just kind of dipped our toe in right before the pandemic with one night completed and one night scheduled, like the second week that we were closed for the pandemic, would be really a dual language parent network, and really helping both all families kind of cross-culturally understand like the multilingual elements, multicultural elements of the program. So looking to get that off the ground as well, that will be exciting. So those are just some of the ways that we anticipate helping families. Next slide, please. And so how will we know that our work is impactful? Focus groups, surveys, seeing increased participation, for example, with our students and activities and athletics, you know, how students are feeling about school. With our families, those same areas, focus groups, and formal input surveys. What does our attendance look like in some of our parent evenings? Do we see increased attendance? As I mentioned, that BPAC leadership group meets monthly, so you really capitalizing on really getting deep input from the members in our community at those meetings, as well as input from other parent network groups, such as our PTO, our parent ambassadors, our SEEM Foundation, just those different entities, just more formalized input and informal input as well. So any questions for me?
Go back a couple of slides to the, go forward maybe one. Let's call it that one. I think you had mentioned some of our other districts, now 75 and 120, have perhaps had access to the bilingual parent advisory. Knowing that we have families from District 120 that are in different districts, but not 75, would they have access to some of this as well, or is this more of a specific?
That's a great question. So when we posted, when we put out our Zoom link for the 2 BPAC meetings that we had this school year with that leadership group, we extended that to the other 2 districts. So we gave that to Daisy and Art to kind of push out at their districts as well. So that was open to whomever had the link. But yeah, I would see, again, because this is an area that we can focus, and Mr. Zach is also going to support this area as well with the bilingual parent advisory. That's an area where definitely we want to continue and grow those opportunities with the other feeder districts as well.
And I think of after last year and returning and anxiety, and yes, it can be different in different age groups, but if it's within the family's household, that family, students in one district and students in another district would certainly be valuable for the districts.
Absolutely.
To have resources. Thanks.
Regarding students, back on the measurements, do I recall that at some point we talked about having some mechanism by which we are reaching out, screening for mental health issues, being more proactive than we have been in the past.
Yeah, so we did do some of that this past year, and I know that Anthony's gonna talk a little bit about that when he talks about the high school, but yes, that concept continuing as well.
Okay, so that would be a part of this, is kind of what we're seeing in terms of themes or trends showing up.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, those opportunities for that feedback from students, and then we're blessed to have a broad array of staff that works within like our student services department that can then immediately respond to those concerns. Those come up from those pulse surveys.
I would like to say, this is gonna be so important because, as we all know, just a mere month ago, we were all wearing masks in the state. Everybody was distanced, and so I think this is gonna be a lot for kids who've gone through 15 months of being told, you gotta, keep your group small and stay distant, and now we're gonna go back, and y'all have been through the high school when the passing times go through. It's gonna be, I think, like going back to Target the first time you've been home for months, you're like, oh my God, there's people. So I think it's gonna be really important to help our students, like you said, reacclimate and deal with the trauma that they've experienced.
Absolutely. And I can tell we all shop at Target because in the past week, everyone that's offering the analogy of where they went, they all went to Target. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much.
All right, up next, teaching and learning goals. Stacy and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Gorman. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning at D120.
I am Sarah Cacciatore. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at D75.
And I think we need to take a moment to recognize it should not be lost on us how cool this is and the impact it's going to have on our students. I mean, our focus, we're excited to talk a little bit about how it's going to impact the learning for our students, but as you see in all the collaboration. So thank you to both boards for engaging in this journey, because I know that probably sometimes it's a little scary and a little bumpy. Okay. So Sarah and I came up with a theme. Actually, I cannot take full credit for it because this is Sarah's brainchild a little bit, but this is a great analogy of what we're going to present tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about what our shared goal will be for D120 and D75, which will be a focus on literacy. We'll unpack that for you in just a moment. And so we're going to kind of talk about the destination. So you've heard the phrase, it's the journey, not the destination. The educational journey is very important, but we got to get kids, right, to master those literacy standards. So when they leave us after 12th grade, they're going to be, successful members of their community. And then the signposts and maps, we progress monitor, right? We're checking in and making sure that students are taking those steps to master those literacy goals and ensuring that teachers are giving that feedback along the way for areas of improvement. And then the vehicle, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get students to the mastery of that standard? And that's going to be instructional strategies. And the reason that we talked about vehicles here is because, as you know, teaching kids is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? And so there's different instructional strategies to use with different students and their various needs. So this is our shared literacy goal. This is a bunch of Common Core stuff, right? And so basically what we're going to work on this year is helping students or having them demonstrate comprehension of fiction and nonfiction texts, drawing some inferences from those texts to make a claim, and then extracting evidence to support that claim. So that's kind of how this boils down. I think what's important, Sarah will talk a little bit about how it will progress over 12 years, but I think it's important to note that both districts have been working on this reading goal, but we really want to prioritize and focus in the upcoming years. And this is not a one-year goal, right? This is multiple years because this ultimately is the foundation for reading and writing standards in Common Core.
So what this represents is really the breakdown of that priority standard and how that looks across all 12 grades. If you were reading this left to right, the RI stands for reading informational, and then you have the grade level representation for K1, 2 as you kind of work up, And then the last number in the combination is 1, which is it's the first anchor standard of 10 priority anchor standards for ELA. So you can see that every grade has a specific focus area that embeds those components that Stacy was just talking about as that overarching theme. And what we highlighted in bold was how you transition from one grade level to the next. So you can see the stair step of responsibility that we're placing on our students to demonstrate as they move through our educational system. When you get through 8th grade and transition to the high school, you see that 9th and 10th grade are banded together, and then 11th and 12th grade are banded together. So because of the level of rigor that is expected at those grade levels, the students have 2 years in order to achieve mastery of that component. So this is a great way for us to work with our teachers, have great conversations, and then they're able to see their grade level, the grade level prior to them, the grade level above them, and have some really nice vertical articulation conversations. So as they're working with their small groups, if they have a group that could use some enrichment, they know exactly where they're headed, or if they have a group of students who need some additional support, they know what the expectation was prior to coming to them, so they can provide that really targeted instructional strategy.
These are state standards.
These are the Illinois state standards. Yes, thank you. And then I just color coded it because it was pretty. Hannah, can you go to the next one? Thank you so much. Okay, so as Stacy mentioned, there's many vehicles, planes, trains, automobiles, bicycles. And so we really like that analogy, especially when we were talking about partnering with both districts, because developmentally, students use different vehicles. And so if you think about the training wheels of an early bike rider, we have a lot more supports in place in order to support reading in those instructional workshop models. And then as students get older and have more independence and autonomy to really drive their own instructional experiences, they get a little bit more of a linear model, but still with some choices. The reason that our elementary version doesn't have specific time set aside is because in each of our 4 buildings, their length of literacy block is different, but the proportion of time should remain the same. So you really want to focus your direct instruction or your mini lesson or your teaching point, you kind of use those terms interchangeably, as really the focus of what the intention is. And then you release the students in that larger portion of the pie where teachers are working with small groups of students, doing one-on-one conferring. The students might be in partnership pairs doing their readings. And so then you come back and you have your share out, which is the opportunity for teachers to get some feedback, those assessment points, or our maps, right, if we're keeping with the analogy, to make sure that the teacher has a sense of what the students were able to accomplish, and then how do they drive their instruction plans for the following day. In the high school, because all of their periods are the same length of time, Stacy is able to have a little bit more formalized structure in terms of how those minutes are broken down.
And it doesn't always go this way.
Well, as with any road trip, as we've experienced these last several months,
yes,
there's often sometimes bathroom breaks or sightseeing detours, but we definitely end up at the vacation spot eventually.
I just finished a 14-hour drive from DC yesterday. There are lots of those kinds of.
Exactly. It's part of the fun
The
of a
kids
road
beating each
trip.
other up in the back of the minivan. Pull over, so.
No biggie. All right, next slide. We're at a time limit here, Anna. We gotta move this sucker
I'm
along.
not putting out his fingers out, they cut me off.
No, you're pretty good.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
good. Okay, great. So other vehicles, outside of ELA, we do have core classes in both the middle school and the high school. And these are some ways that we're actually teaching that common literacy standard in content areas. Again, these are some of the things that we've been working on for several years, but I'm so excited to really intensify our articulation especially between the middle school and the high school, because we can do a lot of shared instructional strategies and resources. So our focus is claim evidence reasoning, which is a part of that bigger standard. In social studies, we use something called a document-based question essay. And in science, we do a lot of inquiry-based projects. And ultimately what they're doing is students are provided with an essential question and they review documents. So in English language arts, it might be more articles and books and things like that. When you get into the more specific content areas, you're looking at maps and charts and graphs, and data sets, those kinds of things. But students are doing, essentially they're doing the same thing, right? They're analyzing those texts, they're making a claim, and they're extracting the evidence for their claim and then explaining how it all connects. And so this will be really powerful for this alignment among all the core areas. They're even doing this in math. It just looks way different than what we're doing here, but it's very common across all grade levels in all core content areas.
Next, there you go. Okay, so here's how we're gonna measure it. We're gonna, sticking with our analogy, right? We're looking out the forward window. We know where we're headed. We're checking the rear view mirror to make sure we have all of our students with us as we move forward. And we wanna keep that high level of energy with a full tank of gas. So we have lots of assessments in place that we're gonna use to make sure that we're trending in the right direction and our students are making gains. The D75 group, you'll hear the presentation a little bit later from Cindy and Laura, more specifically about some of these data points. But for the essence of time, we'll kind of skim over some of these and focus really on, we know that we do have some assessments that are in both sets of districts, which is great. And we also really want to focus on those classroom visits and those grade level reflections. So looking at that previous slide with the workshop models, that pie graph, the linear chart of how we're breaking up our instructional time and having our building administrators have a common set of look fors to say, as you're going into our language classrooms, these are the components you should be seeing in that workshop block. These are kinds of conversations you can have when you're meeting with teachers. These are the kinds of questions you can ask to make sure that we're all trending the right direction. And then we can use that follow-up information to help drive the professional development for our teachers on our work days. That course grade level reflection team time is really where we'll use that K-12 vertical stair-step alignment document and talk about how are we working to make sure that we all reach that final destination.
And for the high school, there's really kind of two sets of data that we're looking at. So with STAR and SAT, that's more of your standardized data. What is really cool about these two assessments is you can break it down by standard. And so we can actually look in both the SAT and STAR how students in an entire grade level, right, are doing as they're progressing on mastery for that particular standard. And then for SATs, freshmen and sophomores take a practice SAT, the PSAT. And so we can also monitor that data as they progress from one grade level to the next. And then the second set of data that we look at is our grade level common assessments. So we have district assessments. Everyone for a particular course or grade level has to administer the assessments. And then they're able to sit down and they look at student work together to kind of identify where, you know, they're seeing student strengths and some areas of challenge. And we also, with the classroom visits, that's an important component. And we have instructional coaches who also can help with that. So they're pushing into classrooms, they're kind of seeing how students are doing, and they're working with teachers on instructional practices that would help students move towards that shared goal.
Any questions for us? Great.
Great.
I don't know if this is the time to ask it. It kind of feels like it is. I love the vertical articulation piece, K through 12. I think that's really going to help the students. And this is probably more of a 6 through 12 question. I've noticed with the shifts from traditional grading to standards grading that one of the biggest challenges for students is they're assessed in one mechanism in a course, and then the next year they're taking the same course, but they're graded under different mechanisms. Is there any plan to kind of align those as you go? I didn't know if this was the time to ask that, but.
Thank you, Erin.
So I'm on day 13. And instead, we're focusing on this standard today. But that sounds like a great thing for Stacy and I to talk about.
I mean, I have lots of thoughts. This is a priority, the grading and assessment is a huge priority at D120. So we have the policies in place and part of them went in effect last year, more will go in effect this year. Mark and I talk about this a lot. And actually Mark has talked with he's met with our department chairs a few times and some of our teachers to try to start aligning that because it is the biggest issue is middle school to high school.
Right.
And then with even in the high school, you know, this as a parent, right? There's I mean, it feels like college sometimes and kids are not, it's not developmentally appropriate to be grading on such different scales.
Mm-hmm. But I do love this topic and I'm excited to start working on it.
All right.
No, I do.
I'm sorry.
I'm kind of excited about lots of things.
I have a whole
working with her
list of
already.
exciting things to discuss. I can't wait. All right. Thank you.
Oh, great. Oh, it's good. All right.
Well, good evening.
Last presentation is the principal's report. Mark Pilot's gonna start us off.
Yep, good evening. My name is Mark Pilot. I'm the principal over at Carl Sandburg Middle School. I'm here with my colleagues, Dr. Anthony Cole, Mrs. Tyler Fergus, and Mrs. Stephanie Drake, who's coming up here in just a minute. Basically, our presentation is where the rubber meets the road, right? It's just to stay with that car analogy and hopefully with Dave's and Kevin's paving equipment. We will right. I'm aspiring, Kevin, I'm aspiring. All right, so. Anyway. Yeah, we're so our two goals stem from all the conversations you've already heard. We have two goals, one in the mental health area. We're going to call it a restorative start. MHS, I believe, has heard a little bit about this in June from Dr. Kroll. And our second one is engagement in learning through a focus on literacy. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kroll and let him talk about our first goal.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm Anthony Kroll, principal at the high school. Nice to meet you all, good to see you all again. As we've gone through the last year and a half, we do know that a lot of our students have, they've had a lot of experiences, negative experiences that they're wrestling with, they've had to deal with. It might be that they lost family members, they lost employment, family members lost employment, which means that they lost income, which impacts their rent, their mortgage, their food. More people relied on public assistance for food banks, as an example. All in all, that meant that many of our students in both districts were not in person for the last year and a half, and quite frankly, weren't involved in the fabric of the school, whether it was activities and athletics or just the school community. Next slide. So although we are excited as we come to the beginning of the new school year, and we are all very excited about starting another school year, we are cautious because we do know that as we start this new school year, there has been, as Jamie brought forth, there has been trauma, collective trauma that we need to be aware of and we need to be able to address when it surfaces. There is not going to be the same cadence that we can expect as we were probably right before we went into the pandemic. It's going to take us a little while to get that stamina back. And the emotional reactions that we have, the grief, the anxiety, the depression that we've all heard through our community contacts, through conversations with students, those are still going to have some remnants that we're going to have, and they're going to have manifestations in the classroom where we're going to have to deal with that nervousness and that anxiety. We're going to have to work with students who are withdrawn or isolated, and how that impacts or manifests itself in their behaviors in the classroom. Okay, so as we start the school year, we are again very excited. We are going in at full knowledge that there is some baggage that we're going to have to be addressing, and our main goal is to make sure that people are connected, supported, and prepared. So if you go to the next slide, the restorative restart, we are restarting after the pandemic.
but we do want to put that word in there, restorative. We want to think of it as a bit of a healing from what we've all been through. So there's 3 components to it. It includes welcoming, bringing people back into the building, connecting them to each other, to the fabric of the building, and all the things that the building offers, whether it's athletics activities and just classroom conversations. We have to reestablish some positive school behaviors. Imagine that over the time, we have lost that ability, our students have lost some of that ability possibly in the classroom of working with each other in groups, being able to integrate with each other, talk with each other, but in a organized fashion. We're gonna have to reteach them some of those skills as we start the year. And finally, we will have social emotional learning lessons throughout the school year. So as we start, next slide, please. You will see in the restorative restart activities to get kids back into the fabric of the school. You will see PD and actions done for restorative practices. Restorative practices commonly will refer to conflict resolution. We do that a lot in our dean's offices or principal's offices, working with students. But we also know that if we're going to see some manifestation of behaviors in the classroom, we have to be able to address those in the classroom. And so that is one of the areas of work that we're going to focus on this year. We're going to focus on executive function, being organized, how to do school right, and how to have those supportive school behaviors along the way. And then finally, you've heard a lot about it, and now we're going to unveil it. The social emotional learning lessons that we will have, not just in the first day, in the first week, but we will have in the first month, through the first semester, trimester, and finally through the entire school year. So we're going to explain that a little bit next, as each of us comes up and talks about the different components of that globally through each district, but also in our individual buildings.
So we're going to start with District 75 first. As you can see on the board, and this will be representative of the 120 program as well. As you can see on the projector, basically we're starting with an opportunity to aspire. All of our conversation at the building levels has stemmed from the board work that started 3 years ago, I believe, in developing the Aspire program. Right before the pandemic in February or January, a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years now, we had community feedback where we asked staff and community to come in and give us feedback on the Aspire program. So this is something you're familiar with. It's something that's gone out to our public. And we're going to really start connecting the code, the leading the pack, flying like an eagle and roaring like a lion over at Lincoln to Aspire. And then, of course, doing it the Mustang way. Never mind. Got to change that, man. I got a middle school mind. I'm not that mature yet. Anyway, what that Aspire leads us to do, well, I'm going to blush. What that Aspire leads us to do is it provides an opportunity for exactly what Dr. Cole explained earlier, bringing kids back into the fabric of our classrooms, bringing kids back into conversation with each other. It's the lifeblood of learning. It's how we create community, by talking with one another, learning and growing experiences, whether, I mean, the book out there, all you need to know, I learned in kindergarten, you can learn a lot from talking to a 5-year-old, you can learn a lot from talking to a senior, you can learn a lot from talking to a senior citizen. We know this about each other. We're social creatures, so that's our opportunity, is bringing in those norms, going over the safety, going over the fact that, why were we wearing a mask if a student's watching this at home a month ago, and why are we not now? Kids need to understand that whole process, and then making available to them all the opportunities at every school that they have to be involved and engaged. That's our beginning. Then we go to a humanity piece where we're just talking about how are you being cool to each other? How are you being a good friend or a neighbor? ties in with the holidays as we move into gratitude, mindfulness, increasing that positive piece. And then we talk about wellness for the next, pretty much the rest of the year in District 75. We're taking care of each other, we're taking care of ourselves, and then we're building those healthy habits. You know, we're aspiring to bring every part into this. Both boards approved, and we have a meeting tomorrow with the Rush Executive Functioning Team to do a study on sleep, because we know our community told us they're concerned about what, you know, how does this affect the kids? And there's not a lot of research out there on the little ones. So it's an opportunity to learn some healthy habits, because just because the older kids get to go to sleep later because they have all of these activities doesn't mean they should be on their cell phones at 2 in the morning. You know, I mean, that's not good. So just building all of those in. So that's a quick overview of what District 75 looks like. I'm going to turn it back to Anthony for 120.
Well, I appreciate, Mark, that you gave me that segue into, you know, the Mustang way, which is to follow our core values, equity, growth, and collaboration, and all the things that we do to value, you know, to work our students to that. As we start the year, we will focus on who we are. We'll focus on being a Mustang and getting connected to the school, the expectations of the school, and the clubs and activities that are all about there. As we get into the later months of the fall, we will start talking about wellness, gratitude, nutrition, exercise, stress around the holidays. All things that we all deal with, quite frankly, all the time in the school, but we're going to put more of a magnifying glass with our students so that they're also part of that conversation and not just when they have a crisis. When we come back from the new year, we're going to talk about humanity. We're going to talk about enhancing personal relationships, understanding our differences, empathy, a lot of the connections that we have to our aspired goals. And then finally, we end the year with opportunity. We end that because we know that as we get to the end of the year, a lot of our students are getting those summer jobs. We're coming to the service project with the entire town of Mundelein, where we'd like students to be participants in that volunteer work. And so we talk about their role in the community and being a part of it and volunteering their time. And so that's how we will end that entire social emotional journey through this year at the high school. All right. So what that looks like at the high school, if you go to the next slide, what we expect that we will see is that we will see those lessons. We'll have less support calls for students in crisis. That's our goal. And we believe that we'll see better attendance and then overall time, better grades. Okay. We plan on measuring that through our pulse surveys. We were giving a pulse survey. We talk about it as, you know, where are you right now? How you doing? And checking in with students. We did that throughout this last year and a half. We're going to continue to do that to see how things are improving. We expect to have an increase in student activities and athletics, and then consequently classroom engagement and grades.
What is a support call?
A support call would be when we have a student in crisis, we have a social worker or counselor engaged with that crisis. It could be just on the verge of an issue. It could be a very severe issue. Moving on. Mark?
Yes, thank you. So what does this look like at Sandburg? We're going to start out by aspiring to live the code. We already have the advisory program in place. It was in place in most of our scheduling last year, and we're going to maintain that advisory program where we teach the social emotional learning lessons. District 75 uses a second step curriculum. That is a curriculum pre-K through 8th grade, as well as Sandburg rolls in the 7 Habits or the Stephen Covey work of the Leader in Me program that the Mechanics Grove, the Wolves have. And then we also have a Rush program for executive functioning resources that we sprinkle in to those lessons as well. So those lessons occur on Wednesday. Our hope is as we move forward, we'll have that program back. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, it's kind of driven through the homeroom and the regular ed classes. So there's the sequenced lesson that all grade levels receive, and then it's reiterated throughout the course of the week. We have our Tiger Code activities, of course. We're going to introduce a program called Taste of Sandburg. It starts with Tiger Check-in. You'll actually see, for if you are a Sandburg student, you'll actually see one of our Tiger Code activities come home. And we want the kids to talk about that code. And then once they get to school, they can, we're going to connect it to aspiring of where they want to be and kind of that ongoing journey that they'll have into high school. We're going to add some activity fairs because as we did our pulse surveys last year and the year before at COVID, before COVID, one of the things we found out was that kids don't always know where to go for information at Sandburg. So even though we do the announcements, even though we have the Power School, even though the coaches and everybody talks about it, we still had some confusion. So we're going to introduce some activity fairs, modeling off what Mendeline 120 does with their freshman incoming class. Just during lunches, just brief shots for our staff to go into the cafeteria and introduce the programs after school, as well as during school, that the kids can get involved in and just become a fabric of the community. And then some community building activities that stem out of the advisory program into lunch. As Dr. Kroll mentioned, we did model at Sandburg some of those pulse surveys, and so we are going to continue that. The other piece we really want to focus on is creating community in the classroom. And so an example of that would be like the Ask 3 and Me. It's been a strategy, a classroom management strategy that's been around for a long time. Basically, it's ask 3 of your buddies before you ask the teacher. You know, just like, where do I get a pencil? Or what page did she say to turn to? You know, instead of raising your hand, just ask somebody. And just re-engaging in that to build that sense of community. Things as simple as that style of classroom management, but we want to bring that out in a social, emotional, collaborative manner. We want them to take ownership. We want them to engage in discovery, and we want them to put forth all of that effort. And then, of course, we did run, much like MHS did, we took a cue from them on some athletic pieces, and we had 7 successful programs that we were able to run, but we did see a significant dip in participation. So we are hoping that we can bring that back, and through, you know, just all of those community events, the kids will feel safe and will come back out for all of those after school and club programs. How will we measure success? Of course, the student and staff surveys, attendance, are some classroom engagement that's geared on not only the walkthroughs and the observations that we're going to engage the staff in, as well as the administration that Stacy and Sarah talked about, but our practice marks and our achievement grades, and then our participation rates. So that's what it looks like at Sandburg. I'm going to turn it over to MG with Tanya Fergus.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tanya Fergus. I'm the principal at Mechanics Grove School. It's such an honor to be a part of this community. As some of you, I've started your kids in their school in kindergarten, and now they're graduating or graduated. So it's just such an honor to be here. At Mechanics Grove, the 3rd through 5th grade building, we aspire to lead the pack, and our students created an entire vision for our school, which is leading the pack. We've renamed ourselves as the Wolves, and the P stands for be proactive, the A stands for achieve your goals, the C stands for act with courage, and the K is to choose kindness. That's completely student created because we are a leader in me school, and we follow the 7 habits of being a leader and creating habits that form our children to then eventually go off into the world and come to the high school and move on. So very exciting. How we're going to aspire and achieve all of that is that every single day we've dedicated time in each classroom, each homeroom for Wolf Pack time. And Wolf Pack time is a 20 or so minute time in the day dedicated completely to direct lessons with Lead the Pack with Leader in Me, direct lessons with Second Step, which is our SEL, social emotional learning program. Discussions about what it means to lead the pack. What does it look like in certain areas, in the restroom, in lunchroom, at recess, out in the community, on the bus, all of that. So we dedicate that time every single day, and it is absolutely protected and non-negotiable in every single classroom. We've strategically paired it up with either the very start of the day or coming back in from lunch and recess in a time where something else can't really, take over, oh, we need to extend math today, so we're not gonna do Wolfpack time, not an option at our school. And that again goes with the Leader in Me lessons which is our 7 habits that we follow. Leading into that is the second step lessons, which will be direct instruction, really creating tools and spaces for students to have the support they might need. And when I say spaces, it means even as something like a sensory room or a comfort corner, different phrases you might have heard that are environments. And we're doing the best we can to be as creative as we can and make sure we have those spaces for students for especially times where it may otherwise have resulted in a support call, as an example. So being proactive and having those spaces for some kids to just kind of decompress as they may need. Also, our family communication, we do a second step. We send home regularly our communication to talk about what our lessons are or what we're focusing on that month or that week, depending on what it is. At Mechanics Grove, we'll plan to do wellness check-ins as well. Things like weekly messages everywhere from in the staff bathrooms to in the morning announcements to on my weekly email at the end of the week. Just making sure that we're keeping that at the forefront and really keeping that positive vibe going. And giving the tools and activities. Spirit days in different weeks, very typical in many schools. We'll try to build those in more regularly to kind of lift the spirits and keep that positive vibe going. And then also just the mindfulness activities. So it might be a staff meeting where we're focusing on, deep breaths and, counting to 3 before we react, just like we do with students, something as simple as that. And just like the other schools, how we will measure success is looking at our attendance rates. It was very hard to monitor that during COVID, as you can imagine. Students were on, they were off, disconnected, Wi-Fi, out of town, whatever it might have been. So we want them there and present and at school. So we'll be watching that. There's the support calls again, just monitoring that. And we're going to follow or piggyback from what Mundelein High School did and then Sandburg did last year as well with doing some staff and student surveys and trying to get that pulse every so often. And then last, but absolutely not least, is our leadership roles as a Leader in Me school. We have increased over the last 5 years, over 60% of our students involved in formal leadership roles, whether it be ones they've created on their own or ones they've applied for, or just being involved in their classroom as the note taker or teacher's helper, whatever it might be. So really making sure that we've refocus on that and hone in on it to make sure that we're giving students those positive experiences. And now I'll turn it over to Stephanie Drake.
Thank you. I'm Stephanie Drake. I'm the principal of Washington Early Learning Center, and it's really cool to be here for the first time in my career, a year in, but we're here. So Washington will be doing a lot of the other Aspire activities. Like the other buildings, Washington has rebranded itself and we'll be rolling that out this fall with the Aspire to Live and Learn with Eagle Pride. Eagle Pride's been around for a while. It's be safe, be responsible, be respectful. So we will be taking the Eagle Pride and blending the Aspire document and goals into our plan. What that will look like will be an Eagle Hour every morning. It'll be a 20 to 25 minute time where we focus on class meetings, on mindfulness activities, on reviewing rules. We will also be learning the zones of regulation, which is a program that young children learn to identify their emotions. Along with learning to identify them, they learn how to react to them. They learn strategies to work through them. And then they also learn empathy for others and how to help their peers. So with both of those, Eagle Pride Hour, second step lessons, and then the zones of regulation. At the K2 building, we will be doing daily zone check-ins, which relate to those pulse surveys that you've heard about for the high school, but they'll be doing it with smiley faces, putting their name card in a zones color chart to identify a little more on the primary language piece. We're also going to really work hard at using the consistent language of the zones throughout our building so that our K2 students really embrace it and they don't hear empathy, kindness, all these different words that they can't process, so that they have a common vocabulary. We're also going to bring back Wellness Wednesdays. Wellness Wednesdays were a thing at Washington prior to COVID. Couldn't figure out how to do them. through Zoom and COVID and everything else. So Wellness Wednesdays could be something as much as challenging every student to do 35 jumping jacks during some course of the day, to take deep breaths while they're walking in the hallways. It could be challenging the staff to take a walk over your lunch hour or drink your 65 ounces of water for the day. So all of those things will be in place so that we're taking care of not only our people and our academics, but also our minds and our bodies. Nothing new on how we're going to measure it. The only difference is that we will have Eagle Pride tickets. And what those are is little pieces of paper that teachers can give to students or classes. And we will collect them. They have the reason they were earned it on it. And we're gonna look for trends. Do we things that we don't have any Eagle Pride tickets for this? We need to reteach that lesson, or do we have great celebrations to happen? All right. Next slide, please. Mrs. Bennett is going to take all of the Aspire things that we've had way down to the little of our littles. And really what they're going to look at is how to play together, how to be a good friend. And the biggest thing is how to use their words. So they will be doing all of their lessons through that. Second step does go down to the pre-K level, but they're also going to add in some big parent and communication pieces to get family involvement and family education going so that it's reinforced in the home. And then their staff will be doing a lot of PD and team meetings to talk about how to build those skills when kids are playing, when kids are talking to each other, when kids are having big emotions and knowing that that's okay. All right, any questions about goal 1? All right. Next slide, please, Anna. All right. So goal 2 for the principals is all about literacy. There is nothing new here. We are going to arrive at our destination. I got you. I got language here. So Sarah and Stacy shared the Common Core Priority Standard that will be our destination. And that is really working with informational texts, being able to ask and answer questions, look for more information, make inferences, make analyses, and all of those pieces. We're going to dive deep. Next slide, please. We're going to dive deep to get there through really focusing ND 75 in the mini lesson. So we're taking one piece of that map that Sarah and Stacy showed you, and we're going to dig deep into it. So our staff will be focusing on the mini lesson. Principal and staff walkthroughs will be focusing on the mini lesson. Let's make sure that we're on the right track, that our car is running right, that we're all going in the same destination to meet our destination. And then we're super excited to be back in a year to share with you how our trip was. And that maybe even show some vacation pictures of our destination. Are there other questions about the literacy goal? Thank you.
I guess I have kind of a general question, and it's, since you guys are driving the car at the moment, you get it. We're talking basically about kids, staff all being back in there. What would the plan be for the parent or the family that does not want their student back in the classroom, and vice versa? How do we handle that situation?
So in June, we went over the remote learning options, and we really have what we would kick to then is a homebound tutoring option for the kids. We did have on the very last slide, I believe it was on 120 as well as D75, that scenario. We don't know if we're going to run into it, or we don't know if we're going to have a kid who is in medical crisis and can't come to school, and then we would move it to a homebound tutoring full program.
that was detailed then, and basically it would be kid dependent. And it would basically run 5 hours per week, just like we would normally handle homebound tutoring pre-COVID.
Let me take it another step further. You have the student that wants to be there, the family doesn't want them there, and vice versa
So
with that one.
fortunately, the plans that we do have in place, should this happen or a student needs to go on quarantine, even though that's not as probable anymore because of the vaccinations and everything. But should we have this situation, we have created a scenario how we'll support them with a case manager and a team of people. So they will still feel connected. The classroom teacher will actually be directly involved in planning and creating materials for that child so that if and when they come back, there is no learning loss. It's a smooth transition back in.
Because now you're dealing with the conflict within the family, you know.
Right, which
I want to
we
be
can't
there.
control
No, you're
that,
not gonna go there.
Right.
Yeah.
And with regards to your statement about students that don't want to be here, but parents that say you're going back to school, I think that's really why we put these plans together. So I'll speak for the littles. You know, we know there's going to be some separation anxiety happening. I mean,
We saw it we saw it this past year.
We saw it this past year, but some of them have been home for 18 months now. You know, why can't I just learn with mom in the basement? And I think that's where all of our lessons and activities and calm corners and supports are going to come into play.
And I don't think that's just at the D75 level. I think that's gonna happen in the 120.
But I think that to that point, I think we know that those are gonna have to be conversations. This is a national conversation we're all having. And then, and on top of that, our counselors, social workers and psychs, if it gets to gets past those conversations and it's now talking about school refusal, I mean, they are trained in those conversations and working through those situations.
And then one last point that I hesitate to bring it up, but what happens if we go back the other direction? I know that we've had the plans over this past year and a half. Do we have to massage that plan that if we do have to shut down again, that we can just ease right into it?
So the nice thing is we've learned so much. I mean, over the course of this year, I think we'd really be able to step back in fairly easily. I'll use that word in quotes, and realize the supports we have to put in place to keep it going. Thankful for Dan Crow that we are where we are with technology. You know, that we know if we have to step back there, we'll all take a really good deep breath and step back in, but we at least will know what we're doing.
If we've learned anything too in this past year, for the most part, children are extremely resilient. I mean, yes, there will be repercussions, there will be moments, there will be, restorative restart that we need to really focus on, but for the most part, they are extremely resilient.
I think the students are probably more resilient than the parents.
Yeah, sometimes too.
Just a quick thought. This is an investment in our community and you can feel it. And there's continuity in the educational care that these two districts are putting forth, and you can feel it, whether it's from the littles all the way up to the transitioning young adults. So to sit around this table and to see it as a plan and to be excited about it, to see it get executed and to know that it can reach every one of our families, whether they're a 5th grader in 75 or a 12th grader over at 120, that's a pretty neat thing. And it'll affect the families that are members of 120, but not 75. I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you
statement
very
of where
much.
we are today. It's a statement beyond COVID or prior to COVID, but it's, well done.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Jeff. Up next, we have an exciting program, the Aspire Academy. Up to do for that presentation will be Jill Unger and Larry Calhoun.
Good evening, I'm Larry Calhoun, with Fine and Applied Arts Departments here at Mundelein High School.
I'm Jill Unger, the District 75 Teaching and Learning Coordinator. And tonight we are pleased to introduce you to a joint venture between our districts, the Aspire Education Academy, which is a high school course pathway and internship for students interested in becoming bilingual educators. So in schools today, staff demographics in terms of cultural and linguistic diversity differ from student body demographics. We as educators know it is important for students to see a reflection of themselves in their teachers and role models. The field of education in general faces challenges recruiting culturally and linguistically diverse educators. The current best practice for recruiting these types of educators is to actually develop our own, and the Aspire Education Academy will help us put this into practice. Mundelein is already a place where former students seek to return. District 120 currently has 20 certified staff members that are Mundelein High School graduates. About 80 staff members currently working in Lincoln, Washington, Mechanics Grove, and Carl Sandburg Middle School both live and work in Mundelein District 75. And this is a unique strength to the community strength within our district.
Another secondary driver to this was Mundelein High School is shifting kind of our protocol, our paradigm for guidance and counseling and course selection. Some of you guys heard me talk before about a very intentional thing we're putting in place where we're facilitating and supporting student self-discovery, so to speak, and then catering to the individual student for career discovery and research and that kind of thing. Well, what we're also going to do is start talking about course selection in terms of an educational pathway to the student's own post-secondary vision for themselves. When I talk about pathways, we're talking about more than just a package of courses. It's certainly that. But we also, for all of these pathways that we're building, we're also trying to facilitate work embedded experiences where they're taking the content knowledge and having practical application that includes internships and all kinds of job shadowing, and also some dual credit opportunities. We have a number of these things already in place. We're trying to have pathways, at least one in each of the nationally recognized 16 career clusters. We have it in business, marketing, finance, management. We have it in information technology, programming. We have it in manufacturing, engineering, and some others. Now we'll have one for education. This has been a very cooperative effort between District 75 and 120. That was probably the easiest part. I think everybody we've talked to was excited and gung-ho to be a part of this. The committee members represent a wide range of roles and responsibilities. We have 11 committee members from District 75, 9 from District 120, and 2 that are shared services. We've divided our committee into 5 subcommittees, each tasked with specific goals that lend themselves to the overall progress. The first subcommittee has 2 main agenda items. Is number 1, how to recruit the students that we want for this. Nobody's going to be excluded from this program. But because of some of the drivers that Jill discussed, we want to really emphasize and do more than just tear down barriers. We want to support and facilitate dual language students and students from diverse cultures to be part of this program. Their second task is to come up with, for lack of a better word, a marketing plan. How do we make sure that students and parents and the community are aware of this opportunity?
So Mundelein High School has the Educators Rising Club already in place, and there will be opportunities for this club to collaborate with Carl Sandburg Middle School clubs, such as the Homework Club and the Community Service Club that's already existing at Carl Sandburg. One upcoming example is there will be a peer tutoring boot camp for students that are involved in the Homework Club and the Educators Rising Club together between our districts on August 14th. And our committee also is working towards other scaffolded experiences related to the field of education.
The third committee is more the nuts and bolts of the pathway courses themselves. What will those courses contain? There will be a progression starting the freshman year and going through the senior year capstone course. What's the progression? What colleges are we going to partner with for dual credit? And then in addition to that, what other courses lend themselves to this outside of the specific education courses. For instance, we've got foreign language up there. We want to really emphasize the dual language part of this particular program. I think that's it for that one. I apologize.
Okay, next is our capstone internship. And this is for seniors in the program. This is what the students are working up to in their coursework all along. District 75 teachers will be recruited and trained on how to best host a student that is in the academy. And the Aspire Academy students will have a diversified experience within the internship. They'll have an opportunity to work with elementary school students, secondary age students, special education students, and also a choice based on their interest in their last rotation.
And the final committee is the scholarship and tracking committee. We want to have a scholarship specific to Mundelein High School for students to complete this. That scholarship will go to at least one student each year, we hope. This committee has the task of finding the source for funding of that. It's got either a sponsorship or grant funds, that kind of thing. But then maybe even more importantly, we want this committee to come up with the system for tracking these students once they leave Mundelein High School. We want to track them through their college career, make sure that they're invited back here. They have a guaranteed student teaching opportunity here. Tanya Fergus just mentioned to us right before we walked up here, she just hired a bilingual Mundelein grad to teach at Mechanics Grove. Our future teachers are in our classrooms. This program just makes sure that we capture them and give them the best opportunity possible. Next slide. This is our kind of our map for implementation. The clubs we mentioned are already in place. They're already collaborating, working together. In September, we hope to have the courses all outlined. That's the teaching specific courses. We hope to have that all outlined, the content, who the dual credit partners are, so that can go into our course catalog. And then that committee with the marketing plan, they need to have their plan ready for implementation. The implementation of that plan will happen in November. We're kind of waiting to November because we want to be 30 to 60 days prior to course selection. And we want to really have kind of a blitz in November, making sure that our students and our families become aware of this opportunity. And then December, January is where course selection usually takes place. We do have one added item there, something we haven't really done in the past. We're going to go to Carl Sandburg Middle School targeting January 14th we're calling it electives fair here. We want to make it more of a pathways fair. We're over there talking to the Carl Sandburg students about the different pathways available, career educational pathways available at Mundelein High School.
And in the fall of 2022, students will begin the pathway courses. In the spring of 2024, we'll begin our training for the internship cooperating teachers in District 75. In fall of 2024, we'll have our first internship students. And in the spring of 2025, we'll have our first Aspire Academy scholarships awarded to students leaving the program and going on to college. And in the fall of 2028, we will host our first Aspire Academy alumni student teachers and interview for possible candidates for our building.
Hopefully some of this is readily apparent. We wanted to list some of the advantages. First of all, students will see the districts and the schools invest in their future. If we're doing this right and the student has this vision for themselves, they're going to see that the districts and the teachers and are fully supporting that. It's going to especially support those culturally diverse and dual language speakers. It's an opportunity for work embedded experience that the students don't currently get, at least in this particular pathway. Dual credit opportunities, and then it contributes to that shift that I mentioned. We're really trying to make it Mundelein High School. We start talking about courses as a pathway to the students' post-secondary vision for themselves.
Additionally, it guarantees students student teaching opportunity in their home community. It leads to a future staff that better reflects our students and community, and it enhances our shared service model already and starting this whole venture together. And we've really worked to build our shared service model and build camaraderie between the shared ownership between our two districts. And teachers throughout our two districts will feel a sense of pride and fulfillment in providing this opportunity for students while strengthening their profession. Teachers love giving back, and this is one way that we'll do so as a community.
Question. Comment question. Is there a similar program like this in any other place in the state, country, whatever, that you've used as a model or kind of got some information from? Or are we on the cutting edge of doing this?
In some ways, we'll be on the cutting edge because our program is really developing bilingual educators. Currently, there's a program that we have been working with to model after in District 214, which is Buffalo Grove, Arlington Heights, Prospect Heights. It's big, okay. And I think Huntley has something similar to.
Only in Dundee Crown. We've looked at actually several. We're not the first. We're gonna be the best. We're just not the first.
Right.
That's great, because then we could be the model. for others.
Yeah, and what Jill just mentioned, I think it makes us unique. We're really targeting diversity on this. We're not gonna exclude anyone. We're gonna fully support and try to make sure that any student that represents the diversity in our student body has access to this program.
I think there's some loan forgiveness options too by working in the district, right?
Yes, I think there's loans forgiveness just going into teaching, but some other things that I can't fully speak to because I don't know all the details yet. There's scholarship opportunities tied to that pathway designation on the transcript that we're gonna have going. We talked about having a scholarship here, but one school that I know for sure already, NIU, if a student has completed the educational pathway, they have automatic acceptance into the College of Education there with access to scholarships they wouldn't otherwise have. So I think we'll see more and more of that, but I don't know how to quantify that just yet.
I remember talking to Andy a while back about student loans that are getting right off because of fulfilling requirements to teach districts.
Well, I'd love to hear this because I know there's already a teacher shortage. And I mean, we may not experience this as extremely here as they are in the southern part of the state, but to see that you're giving the kids the exposure of how this can be done and how it can look and the community that they know that they're coming into, you know, whether they have family here, they just have the best high school experience ever.
And I think we'll see a lot of benefit down the road out of this. And I think the program will be full. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we get to move a little bit here. So I do hope as board members, when you came on and selected to want to be a board member, that you were hoping at some point you would start seeing some of the synergy that we're seeing tonight. And that I hope what you're leaving with today after hearing the shared goals, you clearly understand the direction that we do want to be able to go. And now that you also have a mechanism to make sure we are going in that direction, the passion that we have. So thank you, team. Phenomenal job, as always. Thank you. So with that, District 120, you do have executive session, so I'm asking you to stay here. For D75 team, we're gonna go down into the main area because we have more open session stuff to do. What will take place, each district will hear their specific goals for each district going into this next year, okay? So Ken, let me transition. Team members, if you don't have a presentation, you are good to go home. For some of you, enjoy your vacations. Please bring your name tags, yes. Report. Okay.
So thank you for joining us. And next up, I'm sorry, I'm still.
I'll take it.
You're gonna take it? Okay.
So up next, we'll have the specific District 75 report. This is a follow-up from a previous meeting where we talked about having a consistent assessment model in place. And we're also going to remarks are to provide Laura Ehas.
Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm gonna get us started. I'm Cindy Samantha. I'm the Student Services Coordinator at Lincoln in Washington.
I'm Laura Ehas. I'm the Student Services Coordinator at Mechanics Grove and Carl Sandburg.
And so on to the next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to work on in terms of our alignment was a district-wide assessment calendar. So we've created this. This is the overall global view of the district by month. So this provides a lot of advantages for us. First, it allows teachers to really see the different assessment windows so they can balance their instructional time with their assessment time. It lets us be consistent in our administration windows so that we know that each building is giving these assessments during the same time windows. It allows for us to look at program evaluation because we know when we're collecting this data, we're collecting it in a consistent way so we can begin to analyze the data for program evaluation. It allows us to look at bridging between the different grade levels so we compare the data and we've analyzed it by grade levels. And it can be reviewed annually so we can make adjustments and changes for the following year. Anna, if you could please click on the bottom link. We got a little more detailed in the link so that if you're a teacher and you're working at Lincoln, you can like click on your Lincoln tab and look more specifically at your viewpoint for your grade level, what assessments you're giving and when. If you're a Washington kindergarten teacher, first grade, second grade, and then by building, the assessments change in those early developmental years just based on what you're assessing. So that's why those are by grade level. And then one thing that we've noticed in our data over the years, which has been well researched, is this concept of summer slide or summer regression that happens in data that students lose some learning over our summer months. And so we've introduced an assessment folder in the second tab there, where we want our teachers at the end of each school year to put these few documents of assessment in a folder to pass on to the next year's teacher so that they can open that quickly, see where a student was in the springtime so we can try to mitigate that loss and recoup that learning loss in the fall, so we don't continue to have that learning loss last a long time into our new school. Okay, and then if we want to go back to the main presentation, the first analysis that we're recommending is the STAR being analyzed by growth and proficiency. One more. So the STAR being analyzed by growth and proficiency. So this is looking at our STAR data measurement, and we're going to run this growth and proficiency report annually every spring. So it'll look at spring to spring, fall to spring for each year annually, the growth for that school year. We'll be looking at it for both English literacy, Spanish literacy, and math will all be analyzed. We've defined proficiency as below expectation or met expectation. So below expectation, you're in 39th percentile or below, and you've met expectation if you're at the 40th percentile or below. Growth is defined as an SGP of 49 or lower, you have below expectation, and you've met expectation with an SGP of 50 or higher. So to give you a little background on why those cuts were determined, the student growth percentile describes the student's growth compared to other students with similar prior test scores. So if a student has an SGP of 85, we can say that they showed more growth than 85% of their academic peers. And a student with an SGP of 50 would have made average or typical growth. So that's why we made that 50R cut score. In proficiency, research suggests that the 40th percentile is the cut score to be proficient or working at grade level. STAR recommends the 40th percentile be used as the proficiency cut score based on this research. So we went along with their recommendation as the test creators that the 40th is meeting that proficiency level. And then Anna, if you could please click on the blue link. Then this is the actual data analysis that we've completed. So we've broken it down by each grade level
You can see where we're prepped. Use my little clicker here. Where we've prepped for the next year, so you'll be able to look at the same cohort of peers moving across the grade levels. So this is this year's second grade, their data will be put here in third grade and down. So we'll be filling this out in the spring of next school year. And then you can see the quadrants and the percentage of students that we have landing in each of those quadrants. So they're below, they've met on growth, they're below on proficiency, they met on proficiency, but they were below on growth, or they met. And the distribution in each of those quadrants. And then we've done that for English, we've done that for Spanish literacy, and we've done that for math. Okay.
So in addition to that manual analysis that we're going to be doing, we're also going to be looking at other data points because it's important that we look for majority and trends. So another thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our benchmark assessment, which previously it was the developmental reading assessment, or the DRA. We are, as we talked about in our May presentation, transitioning to Fountas and Pinnell's benchmark system. We are still going to be using the EDL, which is the Spanish equivalent of the DRA at the grade levels appropriate until Fountas and Pinnell develops the Spanish literacy assessments at those grade levels. This is data that we're going to analyze twice annually. It's going to be after the fall and winter assessment. We give this universally, so it'll be given to all of our students in our district K-8. It's a criterion referenced assessment, so it's something that then gives us a cut score or some equivalence of where students should be at set grade levels. So Cindy and I went ahead, and if you click on that link, we went ahead and we created a correlation chart for your access so that you'll have an idea of what we're looking for. So if you look at this, you'll see that the grade levels are here and the time of year is here. And what we're looking for is where a student would be on, the number would be a DRA level, okay? And the letter is how Fountas and Pinnell levels. And you'll see that these students, you're looking for green, which is within grade level or above, blue would be half a year below, yellow will be 1 year below, orange is 1.5 years below, and red is 2 years below. We're color coding it so that then we can make more pretty charts and things that give us more of a visual to this data. If you'll click on that. So also within this document that's linked in that presentation, we made stacked bar graphs. So these are bar graphs that look specifically at the data that was collected in winter of 2021. And so this is going to be established as our baseline moving forward. And again, we'll assess it after fall and after the winter of this coming school year. But you can see how the color equivalence in terms of this is the amount of students that are able to be meeting those grade level expectations or half a year below. And if you'll scroll down on it, you'll see that the colors change as we go through the grade levels. It also shows you students in our monolingual program, students in our dual program. And then if you scroll to the right, you'll also see that it's students in our dual program. The DRA FMP is the English testing. And the dual FMP EDL is the equivalent of our Spanish literacy benchmarking system. So all of that data is available as well. The following tab, the raw data, would show you specifically the numbers of students in each of those categories. Okay. All right, going back to the third way that we're going to be analyzing data is back to the STAR. We're going to be taking the STAR data and we're going to be analyzing it 3 times annually following the fall, winter, and spring assessment windows. This is where we're going to be looking at the distribution of students' progression in terms of attaining literacy proficiency in our dual language program, our monolingual program, and also math. This also is color coded. You'll notice that it's color coded based on how students are performing in both languages in the dual language program, and then also color coded separately for students that are in our monolingual program, which you'll see when I give you the presentation. But it's important to note that there's a separate color category in our dual language graphs for students who are meeting proficiency in one language, but are still remaining below the 24th percentile in that second language. So this shows you, this is the dual language data that we have. One, it shows you the actual percentages here, and then again, that visual to accompany it. You'll see that along the top here is their English literacy, so it's graphed horizontally, and then vertically is the Spanish data. And so you'll see that a student who is proficient in Spanish and below the 10th percentile here, that's 5% of students, if you were to read that, okay? There's also a tab showing the monolingual literacy program, and then also the math. And so this will be something that we will update 3 times a year. Going back to the slides, which leads us to our overall goal. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So our overall goal, we are proposing 3 separate goals. One in English literacy, one in Spanish literacy, and one in math. The goals are the same. So based on that initial graph and the charts that Cindy showed, the annual proficiency and growth analysis based on the STAR data, we are going to be looking for that red category of students, the students who are below proficiency and below our growth targets. We're looking to decrease that number by 5%. We'd like to move that by grade level across all 3 of those areas. In addition, we are lacking a little bit of data because COVID got in our way. So we are also going to be collecting some solid baseline data for our K2 students, as well as a Spanish baseline for our students who were in grade 6 this year in our one-way immersion program. And we'll be able to get that data when they're in 7th grade. All of the departmental goals and shared service goals that we presented today, that all of these administrators have presented, are going to be helped and are all supposed to be working in together to be able to move forward with these overall goals. Do you have any questions?
I have one actually, and I apologize because I didn't think of it until after the question document was closed. So this is really, really exciting and awesome to see. I just was curious what our data relates to like the state report cards, and what data is that based on? And that's just for curiosity.
I've got the state report cards based on that state assessment.
Okay,
that they did.
that's what I thought, but I just wanted to understand the distinction
Yeah.
between the 2.
So it's based on that data point. Thanks.
Can you just clarify again the numbers on the correlation chart for the literacy benchmarks? When you said the numbers and the letters, one's for the DRA, the other is for the.
So the numbers, the DRA, the way that they coded the levels was numeric. Okay, so the way that they do that. So it starts at actually a level A, which is their pre-reading level, but then it goes 1 all the way to 80. Okay, there isn't a level at every number. That's important to know. But the levels are color-coded and associated to the grade levels. Fontes and Pinnell follows a alphabetical system that goes A to Z. So we made the chart because we are currently using data from the DRA, and we needed to make sure that they could talk to each other, especially as we move forward, still using the EDL for our upper grades. But that's what those represented.
Well, these data charts and everything else, you said these will be for us. I think you meant when you come back each reporting period throughout the year and update us, not that we're going to have access to them, not that I would expect to do them all the time. Just making sure I understood what you were.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I mean,
Thank you.
It's a follow-up to that May conversation where we said we need to set up some consistent goals and look at things the same way and be transparent about it. So that's
I mean, and our plan is to continue to put them in these links and have access to these links. So if you're super curious, you want to see our raw data before we're done, you can always get in there. It's not like it's not shared with you. So yeah. And importantly, like our plan is to share this data with the teachers. So like as we meet as grade level teams, as they meet as, building leadership teams, they can look at this data and set smaller goals for themselves within this larger goal that we've set for the district level too.
And I understand, because I think you said when you were showing the first, the assessment folder, is that going to be per class, or is there going to be an assessment folder for each child that each teacher will have access to?
It's for each child. So
Okay.
at the end of this school year, each child will have a work, writing sample, their most recent FMP, so that the teacher that receives them in the fall has a really small, quick little assessment window into where that student was, so that they can hit the ground running with expectations for where their learning should be and recoup that summer loss.
And we're speaking just, since this is the district meeting, we're speaking just within K through 8. Is the intention at some point to have that move on and follow into the high school? Or is that
So eventually, yes, we'd like to see that transfer up to the high school. And that was one of the questions we had when we met with the 75 group about the data that we're looking to use. Ideally, we want to be able to have the system roll right up into the high school.
So we're creating a permanent record. We were always told that there was gonna be permanent records. And I don't know if you ever looked.
Well, and there are those permanent records, but they stay down in the, it's hard for teachers to access this. This is more of a working file record, so the teacher has it in their hands, in their classroom to work with kids, where they don't have to walk down the hall into those conference rooms with a locked cabinet to figure out, where they're at with something.
Good, exciting.
So much. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
All right, we have one more item for us, and Jamie, you want to go over the agreement, the government agreement with Legal Grove?
Hello again. Be a short one. So we have the opportunity, we have an awesome continuum of services for our preschoolers in our Lincoln Early Center. And so some school districts may or may not be fortunate enough to have that robust programming. And so they kind of go through different types of opportunities for their students. In that, and knowing that we have both an early childhood and a blended program and our preschool for all program that we call our Jumpstart program, we were approached in early spring by the Director of Special Education in Oak Grove School District, asking if we would be able to allow for up to 4 students, or even more students, but we went with 4 students to tuition into our preschool programming. So, but specifically students with IEPs, and those programs would then be either our blended program, which is a mix of general ed and special education students for the peer modeling and the larger class size, in our early childhood programs, which is typically a smaller self-contained special education environment. So looking at the trends of our data over the past few years, myself, Cindy Samenta, and Carol Bennett, the principal at Lincoln, looked at the trends of data of our student enrollment, not just during COVID, because obviously we saw a dip, everyone saw a dip in their preschool at risk and screenings, but just looking back a few years, and you're confident with the staffing we have and the sectioning that we have, that we could support up to 4 students from Oak Grove. And the way that the contract was set up is so that they will upfront pay for those 4 spots. And then as the students are identified as needing that program, we'll be able to place them in the program. And so just to give you an idea, they have 1 to 2 students, 1 for sure, who would be eligible right now, but they will have the 4 spots and we'll just maintain space within our program. And we have AM and PM spots. So again, we're very confident that we can support up to 4 students. Any questions for me about that?
How do they get transported? The parent has to bring them?
That's a great question. So Oak Grove will be responsible for all of that. And typically if you have a student with an IEP, or the district's required to offer the transportation. So more than likely the way it'll work is Oak Grove district will pay for transportation and set it all up and manage all of that. And we'll manage some responsibilities in terms of like supporting meetings and supporting, tech glitches and, all kinds of things like that. But from the predominant, what we call the LEA responsibilities, which is the local educational agency, kind of the special ed person kind of allocating resources on behalf of the district, their representative will come to the IEP meetings and work closely with both Cindy and Carol Bennett. All right, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, at this time, we'll just pause and ask if anybody has any questions they wanted to, or topics they want to discuss in advance of the board action items, or if anyone wants items removed from the consent agenda at all. Otherwise, we can proceed. sorry, on the consent agenda. Is there a motion for that or do you?
Yes. It's just all comes motion.
So I can just say, I move that we vote to approve the consent agenda. Secretary, please take the roll.
One second?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready for a second. So St. Clair?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Kinsky?
Aye.
Pelletier?
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Rose?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
Welcome. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, we'll move on to the board action items. I'll kick off the first one and then I invite any other board member to start reading the others. I hereby move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve an additional admin assistant position as presented.
Second.
St. Clair?
Aye.
Kinsky?
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Pelletier?
Aye.
Rose?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
I will move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve a shared services Medicaid specialist grant writer position as presented.
Second.
Fingerhut, aye. St. Clair?
Aye.
Kinsky?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
Rose?
Aye.
Gallegos?
Aye.
Pelletier?
Aye. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve a shared services EPA certified HVAC position as presented.
Second. Kinsky?
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Pelletier?
Aye.
Gallegos?
Aye.
St. Clair?
Aye.
Rose?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the Oaks Grove School District 68 and Mundelein Elementary School District 75 as presented.
Second. Pelletier?
Aye.
Fingerhut, aye. Gallegos?
Aye.
St. Clair?
Aye.
Kinsky?
Aye.
Holly?
Aye.
Okay, that's that. I don't believe we have any executive session agenda items, so we won't be adjourning. The last topic is, or component is president's prerogative. I will ask Mr. Holly to pipe in as well, but we had 3 general topics for discussion tonight in no particular order. First, I thought we'd get updates on the upcoming committee meetings. So if the finance committee could remind us when that's happening?
So we met 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you met 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we
Okay,
met
I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
we
it
met
was
2
coming
weeks
up.
ago.
Okay.
We're all good. I think we're preparing new.
Oh, that's okay.
So, but yeah, we met 2 weeks ago. I can update us on the next one, kind of what we talked about. It was obviously it was mostly an introduction because Ray was a new member. So it was kind of a meet and greet, caught him up on what took place the last 12 months. It was only my second meeting. Total, so. You're the expert. Yeah.
Yeah.
Total. I was texting.
Mr. Price,
I was texting Wild on second.
Mr. Price did
Yeah.
remember say he was open to participating, and
Yeah.
I happened to see him the other week, and so he extends his, he reaffirms his willingness if you would like him to attend.
He is the expert, so, yeah.
Then the equity committee, we are scheduling and in the process of working out the details for our first committee meeting, the 27th, so the last Tuesday of the month. Part of the tech setup, I just wanted to ask the other board members if anybody else is attending but would want to attend virtually. So we're working out how to do the Zoom setup. So you don't have to tell me now, but tell one of us by in a few days.
But we're in person.
We're gonna be in person. Okay, but if any other board members, Mr. Holly, Mr. Rose, Mr. Hitzke, if you want to attend. let us know. Then Evan, you had requested to talk about the CDC guidelines.
Yep. So there's been the updates that have come out from CDC last week. I forwarded to both boards, so you had access to that. Since that's went out, I met with the cabinet team from District 720. We met together. We went through that document to see what that meant for us as a school district, to try to do the best we can to determine how to proceed at the start of the school year. We started that by what is our intent as we went into this school year based off of what we've experienced from the past year now that we know, and then with reading the document. So we went into this with a mindset, we wanted to get back to normal as best we can with the information that we have. So as we started to discuss and go through those topics, the first one that comes right up front, it's about masks. So the first thing that as a group, we would recommend that people will wear masks, but it is not going to be required for individuals. So that was the first part for us and what we would be communicating out to our families. We anticipate to have the letters ready to go by the end of the day, because that's the biggest one. As far as the other things that we had identified within that document, of note, we did go over these items with our MEA and EEA union team with admin, and went through the same process that we did. And while not everybody's going to be in agreement with the process we're going to take, but as a committee, we ended that committee with saying we are in agreement with moving forward with this. We felt it was what was best for our students overall. So I'm just going to run kind of some of the key things that we heard and being asked, so you get a frame of reference. Bottom line, we're trying to get back to normal. We're going to follow the 3 feet as best as possible, meaning putting desks 3 feet, trying to remind kids to be 3 feet apart, because part of that guidance from CDC is if you can't do 3 feet and that prohibits you from opening school as being in person, you then decrease to 3 feet. So one of the mitigations that we are in agreement on, we are going to do everything we can to try to maintain that 3 feet distance. We still will have smaller groups working together in the classroom. We're going to be mindful of that, making sure watching distance for our students. The one area that I will say as we started this process was with buses. The CDC made it very clear. In their verbiage, they said everyone, regardless of state, local requirements, must wear a mask on a bus. So that will be something that we will be requiring that takes place. As far as what we want to do busing, we haven't had clear guidance on the number of students in a bus. T worked with the bus company. Based off our bus numbers we had this past year and seeing kind of the expectations that are coming up, we're going to stay with 50 students on a bus, allowing families to do 2 children being, bless you, 50 in a bus. Reason being, what we did see, many of our parents or guardians felt more comfortable bringing their children to school. So we anticipate that still happening. And then what we also determined was, if we needed to, based off of request, we would always be able to get, at most, is what we're anticipating, 1 additional bus per building. So when we saw that, we thought that was reasonable, that we'd be able to manage that. And the caveat to all of this is flexible. If we learned anything last year, it can all change, but here's where we're starting. We'll be asking all of our students to wear a mask on the bus. The pre-screening process, so when our students come off the bus or get out of the cars or come in the building, we had it set up where there was some process where they'd answer the 5 questions or they showed their blue card and temperature checks. We're not going to do the blue card going into this year. What we're going to be doing is sending out a notice to our families. The expectation, and probably one of the best mitigation strategies, as the adult responsible for that child, if they have any of those symptoms or they don't feel well, keep them home. We'll do everything we can to get the child caught back up and just have that good communication. So please, that's number 1, keep the child home. We will send reminders out throughout the year to do that. The next part is when we talk about the hallways. So the hallway signage is going to be changed to reflect the 3 feet. We will still keep one-way hallways where we can. We're still going to do everything we can to encourage and work with our students, and it's easier to do with our younger students to maintain 3 feet. We are going to allow and have students have access to their lockers. Staff will work with being able to alternate schedules or time, like in a homeroom. You can't have every student go out and still try to maintain a distance. So what we would do is say, all right, every other locker, the kids would go out first, switch out, then accommodate, other kids come out, other ones went in, so that kids aren't always shoulder to shoulder. With the masks, or not masks, going into lunch, that was the next one. Our lunch program is going to run very similar to the way it did this past year. Lunch will be available for any student for free because we're still able to get reimbursed. That's one of the things still in place from the federal government. The second thing is we're still going to do our best with maintaining that social distancing there. So we're looking at other spaces we can try to make available for our students. What the lunch program will be doing is hot lunches will still be available, except they'll be pre-made. And so they'll just be able to get the lunch all at once. Some of our schools had salad bars. We're not going to be doing salad bars. They can still probably purchase some of the individual things, and this is more for the older kids. So there will still be some choice there. Again, some of the lunchroom areas. You two had a flyer on net around you all night. Oh my gosh. I'm serious. What's going on?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Distracted.
I couldn't believe we
I could not react anymore.
So, so that will still be happening, and that'll take place with the lunchrooms and also the lockers. Also, especially for our older students, Amanda Stammer, locker rooms will be open for PE. So they will need to work through what would be that rotation, because usually your PE classes are larger. So that's where Mark's gonna work with his team. We'll still probably look at keeping the passing periods longer to accommodate some of these transitions that we're gonna have. But still a long time for kids to really experience what they used to be experiencing. The cleaning cycles. So we're still going to have sanitizers and whatnot around or available. And if a staff member wanted to have some hand sanitizer, we're going to be providing that. But the routines that we had where desks were getting cleaned after students used it, before another student came and sat down, that's not going to be occurring. One of the things that was clear in that CDC document was saying the virus is not being transmitted through touch surfaces. So we're not going to have that occur day to day. Outside, when our students go outside, they're saying pretty much you don't need a mask. And again, back to what we're saying, you want to wear a mask, wear it. We're not telling anybody not to. So, but it's not going to be required for a student to have a mask on either. That's for anybody. Our classrooms, we are really going to focus on looking at trying to be able to maintain the 3 feet distancing. They're going through a process, our staff. So Mark and the principals, Tanya and Stephanie met with Dave today. They went through what would be a process to help our staff with getting the rooms put back together. Because if you remember, when we went into protocols for COVID, we pretty much took everything out of the rooms and just made what was absolutely needed. So they're working together to say what's the best process for our staff to come back together, say here's what we need. And then for us to get the equipment put back in, desks, the kidney tables, that type of stuff. The other part with our classrooms, it's not going to be as sterile anymore, right? Where we had everything pulled out. I mean, it was the hard floor, the rugs are going back in. If we had soft chairs for kids to be able to sit in to do some independent reading, the kids are going to have access to their classroom libraries. They're going to be able to go back to their libraries again, pulling off books and be able to experience what's reading like a book in your hand again. So the plastic's going to be taken down. The cleaning then for those things, we're still going to go through our regular cleaning cycles that we normally would have. Of course, we're going to still follow the mitigation protocols. If an individual or room had those symptoms, we've got it still in place. That room, those individuals are removed from that room. The ultraviolet light will be then placed in that room. And then we'd be able to have our students and staff return back to that room.
So that is still gonna be accommodated. Restrooms, we're still gonna keep some of the spacing in between the bathroom facilities so that we know we have spacing going on. The water fountains are strictly gonna be water bottle fill only. So we will not be having the pressures where you can just get a drink right from the water fountain without having a glass. What we are going to reserve and communicate for everybody is we're going to continue monitoring our community levels in relation to COVID and how that's also impacting us potentially in the building, like we did last year. So what that means, if we start seeing spikes or an increase in the COVID levels in the community, and nothing's really occurring as far as sending people home for quarantining, we're still going to keep doing what we've been doing. But if we start seeing, we're starting to see people go home needing to quarantine at a higher rate, we will communicate back out regardless, and I inform you, of course, as a board. First thing we'll do is say, okay, we're going to go wearing masks for a couple of weeks until we get this back under control. If the county still has to come in, because we'll still be doing contact tracing, the county could come in and still say they'd shut us down and require us to go back remote. So we have planned that if we need to go remote, we're going to be able to do that on a quick turnaround. But the biggest portion really is A, giving our parents enough notice, B, making sure our students, especially grades K through 3, have a one-to-one device to take home with them. But we have that plan ready to go. That should occur. The one part I said with the quarantine, that we're still going to do. We're going to ask people to have seating charts on our buses so we know where the students are. So if we have to do contact tracing, we want to have seating charts in our classrooms so we know where the students have been, because if we can say X amount of students haven't been near the individual that had symptoms, they're okay. That also then tells us we're able to have a conversation with a family that saying, Eric, if so-and-so was potentially exposed, if you're able to share with me, so-and-so was vaccinated, they don't need to quarantine. So then that way it helps solicit some information, at least for our parents will know, so that'll provide more flexibility. Our nurses will will have access to the iCare system. The iCare system is a state database system that documents all of the students and what vaccinations they've had. So they will have access. Our nurses will. They can't share that with anyone. So that's a key critical part of the whole conversation about saying somebody can or cannot wear a mask. We can't require anybody to ask us that or tell us that information. The issue we have, or what we're trying to also prevent from happening, is for our nurses to be able to identify every student that's been vaccinated, they essentially need to go into the system and look up every student individually. We can't run a batch file. So we could run it in August. They would need to do the same thing in whatever, 2 weeks, September. And just remember, we have 500 to 600, almost 600 students in Sandburg this year. So we didn't feel that was worth the nurses' time to be able to do that. The other reason that we came to the determination that we felt starting off this way would be best to begin is what we experienced. When we had those other mitigations in place with the screenings, we didn't see those mitigations with the screening result in us finding a number of students on a regular basis that had symptoms. What we were seeing is our families were very good with families that sent their students to the building of keeping their children home. And then typically where we were seeing identification is immediately once the student was in the classroom. And that's what our staff was really good at being able to do. They noticed something was going on with the student, they got the student to the nurse right away. So it really limited the access other individuals or young adults, young students would have to. So that was the reasoning for us coming to the decision. We're going to look to start as normal as we possibly can for our students. We're going to monitor what the COVID levels are. And then if they start to increase or we see patterns changing within our own school, we'll modify. And
I
seating being impacted, because you talked about hot lunches and all of that, but so seating charts, would that still apply for contact tracing, like you were saying?
Yes, we still want to have some type of a seating chart for the schools. Specifically for Sandburg, they didn't have a seating chart, but they have the cameras. So they are able to identify the students that way.
I thought they had assigned seats at each individual desk in the.
They started to, but they went to where they were using one of the videos if they needed to for contact tracing.
Okay.
Okay, I asked the same question because I saw the same thing I think you did, but they had the names on the desk when we went in there.
My kid never went back. My kids never, so I don't know. I don't know how that works. Okay.
That's what I remember too, but that was what they expressed when we met to talk about the science seating. So yes, science seating classrooms, lunches, it's definitely going to be taking place, Lincoln, Washington. And same thing when we go at the locker, so we'll know if it's every other locker, this crew's going out. Yeah.
Kevin, Holly, were you gonna say, did you need something or to say something? I thought I saw you raise your hand.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Lisa.
You just have a fly for So then the last topic, unless Kevin, Holly had something to add, was we needed to talk about our legacy files and our board meeting files and balancing the need for security of those files with accessibility. So I read that email that you had shared with us, and it looks like we still have the option to keep, at least maybe for a defined period, maybe it's a school year, all the board files like they had been. So I think it's that.
So the point being.
I guess what is the open question then for us?
So the question really posed to you as a board is, currently in the files you have the current board packet and usually the previous one. What's on the table right now saying, does the board want to extend that further? To go to where if you want to just have access into the file, like, the example I'd give you is, as we get to November, and we're going to be doing the mid-year update in December, you may want to go back to this July and go through the shared goals that we said we were doing. Go back, look through those data sheets that you heard we are going to be monitoring, as a reminder. Under our current process, what you would need to do is reach out to Anna, say, Anna, I'd like to get access to that file again. And the way it's written, you'd actually physically need to come in to be able to go through that, because it's just part of the rules of being important. So what we're asking is, how far back would you want to go with keeping a board meeting in the active file for you to have access?
So I will say, since we started I don't know, a couple of months of going from paper files to Chromebook digital files. One of the reasons with that, all this stuff, we're able to go back, because month to month as we go through I can have a general recollection of, hey, I remember we did this at some. I don't remember, oh, this was on the July meeting versus whatever. And so that makes it hard for me to even know when, because there's not really like an index or anything where I know, Wells used to have his file system and whatever, right? I don't necessarily want to have to print out everything just to make sure I maintain a copy. So that's why I had asked, because I thought it was accessible somewhere and I didn't realize we only had it, so that's telling me if I want to keep access, then I have to make sure to either download it each time and maintain my own copy, or print it every time. So I don't want to have to go back to printing it, because I don't think that that's the whole point of doing the Chromebook and digital file.
When I kind of would use it, if we had a topic, I'd search the entire drive and then it would pop up. But now,
So
we can't.
I guess now access to all of that, I'm just gonna make it a point to download a copy every month so that I have a copy, and then I don't need to bother Anna or come down here and do that, especially since I do a lot of my work not in business hours. So
But we can opt to have
Yeah.
it available, say, for a school year. wanted to try that. Because I understand as board members come and go, we have different visibility to documents. So we want to keep it standard.
What's the
I would
drawback
think.
of doing it? I mean, if we change it, we go to, is it just
In space.
security,
Is that the
safety
issue?
of them? I mean, you mentioned that.
So it's yes.
Well, I mentioned it because that's what I kind of thought. That's wrapped up in it.
Because I'm like Christie, I download it every month, so me personally, it's not gonna affect me. But
I
I'm just saying-
didn't, I'm going to start doing
Okay,
it now, because I didn't know I needed to.
So, but I'm just asking, what are the drawbacks or what are the risks involved?
So the drawbacks, I guess, in an open meeting, once it's out, so it's public knowledge anyway. So the drawback would be is if somebody actually had obtained the copies without providing a FOIA. There isn't really what I would say is a long-term impact to it. What we need to do is just remember whatever we wanted to do for removing the items. And that's more on, it's on Anna to be able to remove those off, take those off. Do you have thoughts on any potential drawbacks if we started to maintain a 12-month calendar year?
No, not really. I mean, you can download it, leave it there, just remembering that piece of it, right? As you come to the next year, you drop off, and the next year, you drop off. Very much like we do with the Friday letters, right? The updates. They stay there and maintain them. The year will come, we'll clean it out. That's what we can have access to it. The best bet is if you do want access, like you said, it's downloaded, it's your computer, it stays there. Or you just can't share it with everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Drawback, right? We don't know if you share or not share, it just doesn't happen, but.
Would it be rolling 12 months or would it be a year and then you'd start fresh?
So if you're asking me for my suggestion, if you wanted to extend it, to me, when we start talking about it, it makes sense to go from July to June. And then start fresh again, because we're always,
But that doesn't defeat the purpose, because if it's August and you wanted to go back and say, hey, what did we do last August? You don't have it to do. I mean, I think, to me, that's the point of doing so, would only be for reference among the board members, not for, I don't know, I mean, I can't even think of what other purpose there would be out there. If it's a matter of making sure we're not sharing it, then I mean, I think that's something that could be, we can all sign something saying, we're not gonna, I don't know, I mean,
well, that's part of what, that's what we did at your board over.
and I agree with that, that's what I'm saying, whatever needs to make whoever is concerned about that feel better, I'd be happy to do that. But to me, a rolling 12 months makes more sense, so that you, and I'd almost say a rolling 13 months, so that you have like that same month from the year before, so that you can see where we're at, and then have it start dropping off thereafter. Because I don't know that I need to go back 3 years ago for anything, but I could see wanting to go back a few months ago, and again, I don't have a working knowledge in my head of what topic we did. Oh, this was from the Navy.
It's only been paperless for 2 years. Everything else exists in paper.
Right.
All the previous board members.
So I think if we can determine, the board has to be able to determine what you think would be the information you need so that you're informed. And then I think we have to say, what's the best way we could try to help support that? So I guess one thing I'd say is, we want clarity, through Anna and I, if you're wanting to go back to drop in packets, we want clarity on that, or would we be asking to start now and start doing that going forward? So determine your length, where we want to go.
What's the difference between, why not keep it the same, but why do we have to come in if we do need something? Why can't it just be emailed to us? Because at that point, you're sharing it. It's the same thing as if it was on Drive for 12 months. And again, I don't know if there's an answer to that or not. Because maybe that.
Well, because the attorney said so.
Gotcha.
That's what she told us, because it's like,
Right.
it's part of where we have board members who come in and see a packet, they're supposed to be there with somebody else. Now, was that policy written when things weren't on the computer?
Probably. And it's probably because somebody violated it along the way to create the precedent to begin with. I mean, they wouldn't require somebody to need to be in the room unless somebody stole it, removed something, copied it, photographed it with their phone, whatever. I mean, but, and I, right, and I get that, and obviously bad facts make bad laws, so that's basically where we're at. So the issue is, and I guess
I just think for working knowledge, and I'm only looking for, again, myself, I don't mind from now forward, now that I know I didn't realize only the last 2 months is on there. So now I'm sort of kicking myself that I haven't been downloading it, because I didn't know it disappeared. I didn't realize we didn't have that access. So I never printed them before, because I thought, oh, well, in fact, now that it's all on Google Drive, I could go in and get it. I didn't even realize until recently that, unless it's in the link in my email, I can't even get it on the Google Drive because I've never been able to have access to that. I don't know if I am just Google illiterate, which is very possible, but I've tried following everything everybody tells me, and I can only get it if I click through the email that Anna sends us every month. So now I will start just downloading it so that I have it. But if I wanted to go back, like when inevitably going through any of the monthly packets, something will come up, or I'll be looking through the bills or something, and we're thinking, hey, I felt like we did, like as an example, it came up before where we were trying to figure out, did we just approve a boiler or something? I hate to bother somebody else with that if I could just flip through my old ones and go, did we do that, or search it myself? Now like I said, I'll solve that problem before I was just downloading my own each month. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it usable, but for the benefit not only of this sitting board, but any future board, to me, it just makes sense. Like, I'm just saying, I think it makes sense to have, if my opinion of 1 of 7 is being asked, of having the 13 months on a board shared drive. Not for any other purpose than just to have it in case you want to go back and see what did, because I felt very lost as a very new board member, because I hadn't seen any board packets before, and I was trying to catch up and figure out what am I supposed to do with, when
Yeah,
I'm seeing
when I
like the
was
monthly
trying-
treasurer report, what did the one 3 months ago look like? I
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
finance report was something I always was like, oh, until I got the cadence of what it was telling me. I always had the one before, so I.
And I'm not saying that only for the benefit of our board, but it could be for any future board members the same way. So that's just why I brought up the topic initially, trying to figure out, hey, is there a way to solve this to make it like a working file? I don't want it to be in perpetuity. I don't want it.
So I think, are we agreeing maybe that we keep it for 13 months and then it's incumbent on each board member to download what they want? So they have, if they want something longer, and is that one proposal?
And beyond that, I have no problem with the rules of coming in and getting it if you want something different, all that's all fine. I'm fine with that. Because then I can just have to play.
Okay. Well, go around, and start with Al and go to the
I'm
right.
open to anything. Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter to me. But I like the 13 month rolling type thing. I think that would serve the purpose of when we want to go back and have that little bit of overlap. So.
Yeah, I would agree. If we are going to do it, I would go with the 13-month rolling one as well. I can have it just adding the link to my drive, so they're all in there.
I'll have to take lessons. I don't even know how to do it, so.
Ready?
I mean, they're not downloading them all anyway, so it doesn't.
Okay.
I have 15 of them. Either way, it's fine.
Good. Rick?
Well, I think like 13 months would be good. I mean, it's like, especially being new on the board and being able to have the ability to go back and make comparisons, or you heard something and, how difficult is it gonna be to do it? I did, Christie made a point where she said having them sitting on a board only view. That's something that could be considered, where they're just sitting with the board to be able to go on to this site and view, instead of everybody having to download and everything else.
So it's what we're saying, I think if I'm hearing you right, so it'd be in the shared Google folder that we have. What we would end up doing is, Anna would end up listing just those previous 13 months. Yeah.
And that's where I guess I need to say, I don't have a shared folder. The only shared folder in my Google Drive on my D75 is when I was part of that union, as a board rep on the union committee. That's the only shared folder that's in my drive. So I don't have a shared folder in my drive, and I don't.
All right, hang on. Kevin? What do you think?
Fine with 13 months.
All right,
So let me understand this correctly, because I want to do it right. We're gonna do July to July, so July 2020 to July 2021, correct? So now, are we moving forward then from July 20, oh, starting fresh this year? Or do you want me to go back 2020 to now and put that in the folder?
I initially heard we were starting fresh now, but is there
Okay.
something different?
Just start.
Start 2021.
I don't, yeah, that's fine, and if, can I, because I don't want to make you do extra work, so I'm asking the question. If I were to say, hey, Anna, can I come in and see the prior ones?
Right.
And if I come in, does that mean I'm not allowed to download it, to look at it and make a copy for myself, or do I have to physically look at it and do that? Or do you already have it scanned, or is it a matter of pulling it out of a files folder and be looking? I just don't, I'm not looking to create anything, I know it was a big PDF, but I don't know if that's how it's maintained.
I got it to be a PDF as a board packet, it will continue to be that PDF in that folder right now, is there previous board packet, that's where I would put everything. Name it, 21, whatever, and that's where it goes in. So instead of being current, it's gonna be moving into that previous folder, and that's where you'll look at it, that's all it was like. Right? Now, if you're looking at, we're starting fresh, then 2020, this is our first packet that will reside in that folder, once this one's concluded, that's what it'll reside to.
So that's what I'm just trying, and I don't have a problem with that, but if I wanted to come in and see the other ones, or is that something?
Well, it resides on, it's also, there's also a paper copy that I have to keep, right, for official files.
But I think what we're trying to say is, should it come in, or would we just do?
Oh, I don't mind coming in.
Download a PDF and email it?
No, I'm fine with coming in,
No,
but it's,
Judging by what the lawyer said.
Yeah, if the lawyer says
That's
I
what I
gotta come
heard
in.
there, you're like, the lawyer said, so.
No.
and I don't mind
It
coming in.
sounds stupid saying it, because you can download it anyway,
Right,
right?
but because it's older than a month, now you can't, that just kind of sounds counterintuitive.
So if you want to look at, let's say, August of 2020, you're asking, should I make an appointment, we'll look at it together, and then we're done, and then at that point, then I download it. Right, that's the question.
It is, and again, I'm not looking to make any extra work, I'm just asking so that I can understand what if I wanted to do that, since I didn't have the hindsight of knowing I didn't know I was supposed to be downloading them.
Put it in the folder now. Right? And if it's, why don't we put the 2020, July
Go back.
2020, yeah, the July 2020.
Basically last school year,
Now,
just last
leave
school
it
year.
there, right, last school year.
Right.
Leave it there and put it in that folder, and then we'll
Fiscal
start that
year, I
fresh.
should say, not season, whatever.
Right?
That would be, I think, ideal. If
This way, that should
not
alleviate
too
some
hard.
of the issues, I think, that might come up if you want to look at something.
And now we need to make sure to tell all future board members, if you want to look at that. Yeah. And that's fine,
Right? Okay.
thank you, I don't mean.
Thailand, we just, before the next board meeting, okay?
Oh, yeah. At 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Tomorrow? That's tomorrow's rule one.
Mine is 10 o'clock now.
Plenty of time.
Okay, 2021 folder, and I'll reside in that previous folder.
Thank you.
Kevin, Holly, did you have any topics we haven't covered?
No, I don't. The only thing I will add is that I will send out the exit slip for tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. If there is no further business to come before the board, the meeting stands to be adjourned at and I have a motion to adjourn.
You don't have to second that one, we just all in favor?
Aye.
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 Hope your vacation's going well, Kevin.
Enjoy it, Kevin.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time out.
Kevin, you're gonna have to come in to sign the minutes from the last two at some point.
Okay. I can do that. Thank you.